people continue to trickle in. Welcome, I'm Matt Edwards. I'm excited to host this webinar today, sponsored by the CCM Vocal Pedagogy Institute. For those of you who don't know me, I'm the Artistic Director of the CCM Vocal Pedagogy Institute, and I'm also an Associate Professor at Shenandoah Conservatory, where I coordinate all of the musical theater voice training for our BFA in musical theater. And I'm excited today to have with me a very special friend, Holly Johnson, who is a college admissions consultant. She used to work with me at Shenandoah Conservatory in the admissions office, so she's actually been on the other side of this whole process, on the back end, helping students get through the process, get ready for their auditions. And she now helps as a consultant working with students and their parents to get them through the whole process. Not necessarily on the artistic side of actually prepping the audition materials and whatnot, but helping them organize their materials and navigate all the many things we're going to be talking about today.
Thanks,
we're going to be both be chiming in here today about different things.
We are charming. I mean,
so we'll be doing that. Just a couple of brief things to get us started. A few just disclosures. I am a pre-screen reviewer at Shenandoah Conservatory, so that definitely informs some of my opinions on the things we're talking about today. I also am one of the audition panelists who watches, all the live auditions as well. I do not offer any college coaching services, so this is in no way marketing or anything for any of my services. I just wanted to provide this because being on the other side of the audition process, I know how many high school students are lost. I know how many teachers are feeling the struggle now because of how complicated this whole process has been. And we just wanted to offer this through the Institute to make this information available to everyone. There's no sales pitch. Private lessons and teacher coaching I do on the side. I do workshops for voice teachers. I would say that if you are interested in getting more of this kind of information, please follow me over on TikTok or Instagram. Throughout the fall, I will be putting up some college coaching information, and then I will also be doing my typical voice information that I put out there as well. Holly has done 10 years in college admissions, 3 years as an independent education consultant, specializing in the performing arts. She is available for hire with multiple services to help students through this process. Again, this is not necessarily a sales pitch, but she is available if you find her services of interest to you or your clients. Today, as we go through these different conversations, we are going to definitely have some issues coming up addressing gender identity. And I just wanted to clarify our terminology to make sure that everybody understands why we're saying what we're saying. If we use the words female or women, we are talking about female identifying students. So regardless of what your biological sex is, if you are female identifying, then what we're talking about in that moment would apply to you. If you are male identifying or fall in the category of men, that's what we are talking about, regardless of your biological sex. And if we are talking about students who do not necessarily identify with one of the gender binaries, we will usually use the terms non-binary or gender non-conforming. So what I want to do is start off by talking about choosing programs, because this is the first step that you really need to start going through in this audition application process. So there are 3 different kinds of degrees that you are going to find musical theater majors existing under those umbrellas. The first one is a Bachelor of Arts degree. Now these are all, broad definitions. There are definitely schools where they kind of defy these categories. But if you're looking for a starting place to start your search, this should at least help you. A Bachelor of Arts degree is usually more of a generalist degree. It's not as performance heavy. It's usually designed for performers who are also interested in other areas. So they might have some backstage interest. They might want to choreograph. They might want to direct or music direct. It's also really an ideal degree for students who want to minor in something else or and pursue a double major. They can still be performance heavy, but the idea and the design of a Bachelor of Arts is usually a broader scope education that's not necessarily as honed in on the performance aspects.
And real quick, most of them are also non-audition programs.
Yes. So we have a lot of non-audition programs falling into this. BFAs are more of a theater-centric degree, so this is really performance-oriented. There's not much wiggle room to study anything other than acting, singing, and dancing. Minors are tough. Double majors are pretty much unheard of. Every once in a while somebody will pull one off, but it's really, really, really hard. I would say the same thing about the Bachelor of Music degree. Again, minors are tough. Double majors are almost impossible. The only difference between a BFA and a BM is that the BFA lives in the theater division and the BM lives in the music division. The music degrees tend to have more music theory, more music history, choir as a requirement, whereas the BFA usually has a little bit more acting focus, maybe a little bit more dance focus. Again, this varies institution to institution, so we do have to do our individual research on each school, but this can be a rough guideline. You're always kind of looking at the balance of what is either a liberal arts curriculum or a conservatory style curriculum. So the idea behind a liberal arts degree is an old degree. It goes back to ancient, or an old philosophy. It goes back to ancient Greece, and that's the idea of creating well-rounded citizens who have knowledge of lots of different disciplines. And so that's the idea to this day of a liberal arts education. Then there's more of a conservatory style, which is falling under more of a professions pursuit. And in that kind of a degree, yeah, you have some classes outside of your major, but the majority of your work is in whatever you are pursuing as your course of study. So it really comes down to the number of required gen eds. For instance, at my institution, which is a conservatory style institution, we only have 6 classes that qualify as gen eds that our students take. Other schools may have 15 to 20. So that's where the difference is. At the end of the day, a bachelor's degree is a bachelor's degree. So if you have a student who's considering graduate school down the line, having a degree from a conservatory versus a liberal arts school is not going to be the end of the road for them. They're still going to be able to go to graduate school with either one of these degrees. Now, as you're looking at schools that fall under these categories, you're going to find a lot of lists out there that give you college rankings. And what I would suggest is that you look at these college rankings as a list of competitiveness instead of quality of the program. Quality is subjective, competitiveness is not. So if a school lands on a top 10 list or a top 20 list, it's probably pretty competitive. What does pretty competitive mean? Well, for the most competitive schools, your top 10, you're looking at 1,000 or more applicants per year. When you're looking at the top 20, you're probably seeing at least 1,000, maybe you drip down into 750 or so, but you're still in really high numbers of applicants per year, usually for somewhere between 8 and 24 slots for these schools. There are a few schools that will go up to 50 to 70 incoming students. The lowest I know of is a school that takes about 8 incoming students. The other problem is anyone can post a top 10 list. So you can have a blogger who just really enjoys musical theater posting this list, and it's their subjective opinion. It's not necessarily a completely wrong opinion, but it's just their thoughts, and it's not taking into consideration the individual needs of each student. All right, even the most people on Broadway, there's a recent list that just came out. I just saw it actually a little bit earlier today. And that list, you have to keep in mind, is full of schools that have been having great reputations for the last 20 to 30 years. Many of those schools have had the same people running the program for the last 20 years. And if you had a 20-year track record, of course you're going to have a lot of people on Broadway. But there are some new educators who are really, really, really good at schools that they've only been to for 2 or 3 years. The education of that program is excellent. They're not going to end up on one of these lists because they don't have a 20-year track record. So you want to take that information in and yeah, use it because it's valuable information. But just keep in mind there's more to it than whether or not a school is on one of these top lists. Those rankings do not account for personal preferences. They don't account for if a student wants a big school or wants a small school, if they want sports or Greek life, right? There's things the students are interested in that really need to come into the picture that's not captured on a top list. The audition process is an odds game, and everybody is looking for something different in each one of these schools. And so you have to keep that in mind as you're trying to pick what schools you want to apply to. If you're applying to schools that traditionally only take dancers and you don't really dance, you're probably not what they're looking for. And even though you audition for 20 schools, you may not have the results that you're looking for because you're not really their type. That's okay. You need to find the school that is your type. Even the best performers are going to target some of these schools and they're not going to get in, right? There's students who have already been on Broadway every single year, and those students who already have Broadway credits get rejected from schools because each school needs something different. Some are looking for 3 leading men, 3 leading women. Others are looking for unique individuals. And so you have no way of knowing that unless you've done a workshop with the school or you've listened to some podcasts with the people from the school and you know exactly what they're looking for. That's why we always suggest that you cast a broad net. So how do you do that? Well, you got to start putting a list together of all the places that might be good for you, and then you have to do your research. So one of the places I would recommend that you start is the Musical Theater Resources by Kevin Michael Jones. Kevin is a graduate of our pedagogy program, and his blog and website is excellent. It's packed full of free information. I put the tiny URL up on the screen for you, and you can write that down for a minute. And what he has is a list of schools divided by BFA, BA, and BM. And so you can find the school names, find where they're located, and you can jump over and search through that list and start figuring out, some names that you might recognize or schools that are in your state or in a nearby state, and you can start your search there. The next thing I would suggest you do is to jump on over to either Apple Podcasts or Spotify and search College Auditions Musical Theater. There's several podcasts. Some are only on Spotify, some are on both. But these podcasts actually have the interviewer sitting down with people from these university programs, and they talk for a half hour, 90 minutes, all about the program. So you can sit down and learn what the faculty are looking for, what they really value about the education that they offer at their institution. This is going to give you a deep dive that you're not necessarily going to be able to get just by searching around on websites. And I can't recommend this enough as part of your process. You're also going to want to jump on over to the College Confidential Musical Theater Forum. Now, this forum isn't as active as it was 5-10 years ago, because now we have Facebook forums and other outlets, Instagram, TikTok, where people are gathering their information. But there's a lot of archival information here about different schools. Which schools tend to be really dance heavy, which schools tend to be more vocalist focused or actor focused. And there's people always posting about their experiences just going through the pre-screening process, going through summer camps. I had a question that came in about high school summer programs. You're going to find out about those on this list. And if that's something that you're really interested in, I highly recommend going through their archives to look for those. Then we have the Facebook groups. And I am banned from these as a college faculty member, so Holly may have a little bit more insight on some of these, but you have the College Musical Theater Program Discussion Group. I believe that's got a lot of students in it as well as parents. And then the MT Parents Group on Facebook as well. Holly, you want to say anything about those?
Yeah, so there's a lot of really great information, especially MT parents. They're constantly sharing feedback from their students that have just, started their freshman year, things that they've went through as a parent, as their student went through this process, sharing concerns. Did you hear this about this school? Things like that. So there's a lot of great information. I tell my families all the time, I'm like, you are more than welcome to use whatever resources on your fingertips. Just remember that personal opinions are personal opinions. And even though a family might have gone through this before, they're not the end all be all. Their opinion is not necessarily the correct advice. So if you're there just to resource and to learn and to listen and to share, absolutely. I guess with anything, especially on a Facebook group, just remember that it's not all canon. Sometimes it's just personal opinion.
Yes, absolutely. But those personal opinions matter. And so you want to help you just get a bigger scope of what is going on, especially if you're outside of the loop on these things. So when you start going into the nitty-gritty of researching programs, the first thing you're going to want to do is say you've identified a school through your search through Kevin's website, or you've identified schools through listening to the podcast, going through those different forums. You're going to want to do a Google search for the name of the school followed by musical theater curriculum. Now, every website's different. Some schools just list their musical theater curriculum. Some give you a downloadable spreadsheet or a checklist. Others are going to send you to the course catalog. And those can be kind of difficult because you end up getting into a 500-600 page document and you have to comb through that document to find the musical theater degree. So admittedly, this isn't always easy. But it's worth it because what you're going to find in those curriculum sheets are the list of courses you're going to take over the course of 4 years in that degree program. And it's going to show you how much of a focus there is on the acting versus dance, music preparation, voice. It's going to show you if there are any special topics that school covers, things like film, choreography, directing, Shakespeare, stage combat. You're going to learn all about those things by going through the curriculum. Now, while you're on the university's website, you probably want to take some time to also learn about their faculty. Get on there and look at both the full-time faculty and the adjunct faculty. And adjunct faculty tend to have a little bit more turnover. We tend to see full-time faculty stay for longer periods of time, although it is worth keeping in mind there's been a lot of movement lately. So you may have heard about one professor at one school that was doing really great work, but you do want to check to see if they're still there because last year I think it was about 10 different people moved around. And so, there's 10 programs that had, great people in charge who are in a transition phase. Now, in that transition phase, they may turn out and be just as well off. They may see some new things that are really exciting, or that school might struggle to find somebody who does the same things as the former person did. So you want to kind of get an idea for where they're at. Anytime you see the words visiting, a visiting professor, assistant professor, means that they're only there for 1 year. Sometimes the visiting will stay for 2, but it means they're not yet on the tenure track, and so you have no guarantee that the person is going to stay there over the long term.
And also, it's just me being in this space for a long time. You shouldn't go to a school because of one faculty member. You've got to. Matt, are you talking to your camera by doing that?
I'm talking to my camera. Sorry, it picked up my hand signals. But yes, we were laughing. I have a fancy new camera. I'm still learning it. Go ahead.
Just like don't take a job because there's one colleague that you think you're going to be friends with. You're investing 4 years. And that's a way broader experience and investment in end goal than just working with one particular person. So just keep that in mind.
Yeah, absolutely. So what I then recommend doing, and Holly has got some other insight on this, but to put together a spreadsheet. And so on your spreadsheet, you want to start listing down the things that you discover about each school. Now, this is a long list. In your initial scan of schools, you're not going to worry about a bunch of this. You're going to pay attention to the things that really matter to you. So, of course, the name of the school. But if cost is not a big deal for you, then you're not going to worry about that. Whereas if cost really matters, then you're going to want to do some research to see if it's within your budget or not. Sometimes finding out how many students in the program is tough. Some of these other things may be easy to find, difficult to find. But, grab onto what matters to you and make notes about what matters. Other things like curriculum shortfalls, gen eds, are things to keep in mind. Now, as you start to narrow down your list and you've maybe looked at 30, 40 schools and you're trying to get down to your 10 to 25, you definitely want to start taking some notes about the application requirements. If there's an essay, every school is going to want transcripts, but you just want to see if they need anything special on those. Recommendations, most schools are going to ask for. They all have different ways that you get those recommendations submitted, so you just want to be aware of that so you can plan ahead. You don't want to have to go back to the website later if you can just figure it out while you're on the site. You want to make sure you understand the pre-screening requirements, the dates, audition requirements, and the audition dates. You want to really, really, really stay on top of your deadlines. This is one of the things that Holly talks about a lot, is really making sure that you track all of these little things because they're what can trip you up.
Yeah, I think deadline management is probably honestly why I have my job for a lot of families. I would just put in there that when you're doing research, like if you're working with a junior who's going into senior year or preparing early, requirements can change year to year. And most of the time, schools do not update their website. So, for example, right now we're looking at the fall of 2025. Most schools didn't start updating their website for fall 2025 admissions, pre-screens, auditions until into August, some all the way up to October 1st. So looking at the previous year is helpful when you're doing your initial planning and strategizing, but you always have to go back and confirm what the new deadlines are or if any of the requirements have changed.
Yep. Great. So now I'm going to start and tell you, I've taken a lot of your questions that came in. We had a lot. So we have a bunch of them at the end of this thing today, which is why we're recording it in case you have to jump off early. For some reason, I cannot see your live questions right now. I'm going to have to stop the slideshow at some point unless Holly can see them. And
Yeah,
so
I can see them. I don't see any yet, but feel free to ask questions, y'all.
Yeah. I was getting notifications. So if you are watching them and we're not answering them, we'll come to them as soon as we stop this slideshow. So one of the questions that came in was, how can you tell if a musical theater program has a strong enough dance component? And that is a question that is on a lot of people's minds. And to be honest, it's kind of tough to know for sure. But here are some things that you can do to try to infer whether or not they have what you need. First is, as you're looking through the curriculum, look at the required number of dance courses. All right. Most schools, if they know that a course is critical to offer, are going to make it a requirement in their curriculum, because a lot of universities won't let you offer that class if it's not required. So when you see a school that has, only one dance class required per semester, they may not have a whole lot of offerings outside of that. You're going to have to ask. You're going to have to see if maybe they do offer other dance classes for their dance majors and whether or not you can take them. If it varies year to year, if it's guaranteed, if it's based on availability of space in that class, you want to find out. If they have 2 and 3 classes required every semester, then that's a pretty common signal that they consider dance to be really important in their degree program. You want to look at the size and the diversity of their dance faculty. And by diversity in this instance, I mean diversity of styles, right? So if you see the dance faculty only has ballet and jazz, well, that's a little bit different of what your exposure is going to be on the dance side than if you see a school that has, some world dance styles, has hip hop as available, has tap dance available, modern dance available, lyrical dance. So the more offerings you see in their course catalog that you see being offered from the dance division as well as the musical theater division, the more likely you are going to a school that has a lot of opportunities for you to improve your dancing skills. So that diversity of offerings in the courses is telling you a lot. You also want to see if there's an opportunity to minor in dance in the musical theater degree program. A lot of schools do that to make access to those dance major courses more available to their musical theater majors. So I would do that. You can also jump online and watch the senior showcase. If you see really great dance in the senior showcase, that's clearly coming from their training. You can get on sometimes and find production videos from different universities so you can evaluate what the dance level is like there. And sometimes you're going to find choreography reels from performers that went to these different schools and you can see where they're at. Now keep in mind, not every school is going for only top level dancers. So you might find a choreography reel from a school, just one, and you may not be overly impressed with that student's choreography reel. But it's possible, or their dance reel, it's possible that they are really a singer-actor who moves well and that the dancers haven't put anything online. So make sure as you evaluate, you're keeping an open mind and you're trying to look at a big number of bits of information and not just the 1 or 2 that you find. Another question that came in is, do colleges always want triple threats? Do I have a lower chance if I'm not as strong in all 3 categories? This depends school to school, and unfortunately it is kind of hard to know without having access to the faculty to hear them talk about what it is that they want. In general, if the school is more competitive, so if it's a school that's seeing 1,000 applicants a year, they have the ability out of 1,000 people to most likely find 18 triple threats that they want in their program. And let's say they want a singer-songwriter. Well, when you see 1,000 to 2,000 people, you're probably going to find a singer-songwriter who also dances really well. Let's say you really want people who are great on camera. Well, out of 1,000 people, you can find the person who's great on camera and dances really well. Does not mean that school is going to do only that. Some of these top-tier schools do want people who are just movers, who are phenomenal actors and singers, and they will take the best actor singer they see and teach them to move, and they're not going to worry about trying to find that unicorn that does all 3 things. So all I can say is we'll be talking here on some of these later slides is finding an ideal balance of schools to apply to, so you're not putting your eggs all in that top tier basket where it's highly, highly competitive, but you're spreading out your net that you're casting so you have a greater opportunity. I wouldn't say that it gives you a lower chance if your singing and your acting are incredible. If you feel like your singing and your acting are kind of at an intermediate level because you haven't had a whole lot of opportunity, and you don't dance because you haven't had a whole lot of opportunity, then targeting only top tier schools may not be the best thing for you because you may actually have a slight lower chance, or for your students if you're one of our teachers who's here today. I didn't mention that earlier. We do have a good mix of teachers and students watching this afternoon and parents. But if you are not necessarily a triple threat, just kind of keep that in mind of how many of the highly competitive schools you pursue. But if you're like, I am one of the best singers in my age group and my acting I've been working on for 8 years, then I wouldn't let it hold you back for auditioning for these schools. Holly, do you have any additional thoughts on that?
Nope, I was just answering a question in the chat.
Great, thank you.
Mhm.
Another question, is it vital or better for a musical theater program to go to the university in a city rather than a rural area? I think a lot of this depends on the students' needs and how they do in different situations. Some students, we're a rural campus at Shenandoah. I've been to many other universities that have rural campuses, and the students like it because it's distraction free. they're not trying to be they're not enticed to audition for every professional musical that they see, and instead they focus on their schoolwork. And we as faculty like that because you have the student focused on their training instead of focused on the outcome. When they're only auditioning, sometimes they get so hyper focused on their auditions and trying to book a gig that they ignore their classes. Now, for other clients or other students going into this, they might be to the point where college is kind of an iffy thing. Like they already have a lot of professional credits, they already have an agent, they're already equity, and they are to the point where college is a toss-up, where they may feel like their financial situation is one that they don't need to worry about a backup plan, they don't need to worry about another career down the line, they can just go all in on their career right now. For that student, being in a big city might be ideal for them because they can start auditioning for the professional work. But if the student needs training, I don't think that they necessarily need to be in a big city. I think having access to a big city is great. So if you're an hour to 2 hours away from a big city where you can go in and see professional theater productions, you can go see touring productions, that's a really positive thing because you can go watch people applying what you're learning in class and then go back to the classroom thinking about what you saw and how to take your teacher's directives and start to apply them in a way to get towards the goal that you're seeing on those professional stages. So yeah, not a deal breaker, but it's something that needs to be decided by each individual student. Another question is what affects acceptance rates? So I was talking to Holly. I think a guesstimate of how many people are auditioning each year is somewhere between 2,500 and 3,000. That's a guesstimate. I think that it could go up to 4,000 possibly with some numbers I've heard. I don't know if they're true or not. I've heard that there is one particular school that sees 2,000 to 2,500 students per year on pre-screens, and not every student applies to that school. I don't know if I believe that or not. If it's true, then there's probably closer to 4,000 people applying. Most schools that I hear talk are looking at around 1,000. And again, not every student applies to every school. So knowing how many people are parts of these different thespian organizations, I think we can estimate 2,500 to 3,000. I did some research and I did find from last year's numbers on some websites and people I know because I have had interactions with their organizations that there is approximately somewhere around 500 students that have audition coaches. So, this could give or take 50 to 100. I don't think it's a whole lot more. It might be 400, but I know that it's at least around 400 people with audition coaches. Now, a lot of the students who have audition coaches, they really are trying to pursue those top tier, most competitive schools. That's why they sign up with a coach. So that means you have about 500 people pursuing the same 30 schools. And those 30 schools, let's say on average, take 16 students. That means there's 480 slots available. And so you have 480 slots with 500 students with audition coaches all trying to get those slots, and then another 2,000 students or more without an audition coach all trying to get into those schools as well. So really what affects the acceptance rate is how many students are applying to these programs. Students with a coach are not necessarily more likely to get accepted to a student than those without a coach. We'll talk about that in a couple slides. So it's really a numbers game. If you are auditioning at a school that has 1,000 applicants, then you are looking at around a 3% acceptance rate by the time they accept students, knowing that some are not going to come to that institution. They always over-accept. If you are looking at a school that auditions 100 people each year and they're trying to take a class of 18, then you're looking at probably a 36% chance of getting in because most schools accept about twice of the number of students that they expect will come into their program. Holly, anything to add on that?
Just clarifying, Matt's talking about acceptance into the musical theater program, not necessarily academic admission to the university. That's most of the time a separate everything. Sometimes it's a separate application. They're looking at different material and you're being evaluated on different criteria.
Yes, and that's a great point, Holly. To keep in mind that you do have to gain academic acceptance to these schools. Some schools have really a lot of leeway to let in lower performing students into the program, while other schools don't have any leeway. So you might want to reach out to the admissions department if you have a lower GPA than what the school says is required and find out if that is negotiable based off of your talent or if that is a hard line in the sand. And that way you can at least save yourself money from applying to that institution if it is a hard line. So you're going through all this process, trying to identify which schools to apply to, their acceptance rates. It is overwhelming. I'm not going to lie, it's a lot. We know it's a lot. So Holly and I were talking about. This is a lot of information today. Unfortunately, this is all market dictated. We at the university level have not decided that we needed 3,000 students to apply. Unfortunately, it's just kind of become the fastest growing college major. Not unfortunately, there's a lot of good things out of it. But for those students who are trying to go through this process who are overwhelmed, yes, a lot of students have gotten interested in this in the last 15 years, and it is a little out of control. So what I would suggest you do is start thinking about categorizing shows into a list of reach, challenge, and safety schools. Now, this is going to be determined by you and your talent and your assessment of your own talent. So to get an idea of where you or your students, if you're a teacher working with students, you want to know where your students stand. What I would recommend doing is going online to YouTube and looking up senior showcases of the schools where your student is interested in going. And if you can look at that senior showcase and say, my student is in the ballpark where they should be able to get there in 4 years, then it probably falls into reach or challenge, okay? If you watch that video and you're going, wow, my student is at the same level of those students already, then it might be a safety school. Remember, some of these safety schools still might have 500 applicants. They're safety because they're not looking at 1,000 to 2,000. But they're safe because you already are kind of at that level. They're only seeing 500 students. So your odds of getting in are pretty high if you're already at the level of their seniors. But it's not a guarantee. You can get online and find, all kinds of performance videos like I mentioned, and just watch all that you can from that university to see what the talent level looks like, especially for you teachers on the singing side and the acting side, and see if your student's going to be in line with what that is. You're going to try to pick 15 to 25 schools, and I know this is absurd. It used to be 5 to 10, then it became 10 to 15. But now with 2,000 to 3,000 students applying, most coaches are saying 15 to 25 because you can pre-screen. And we're going to get into the pre-screens here in just a minute. But the pre-screening opens up a lot of opportunity to find out if you might be a fit or you might not before you spend money to go to campus. So what I would suggest is that you have a small amount of reach schools, a good amount of challenge schools, and then depending on your needs, the safety schools might be less than the others, less than the challenge, or it might be a little bit bigger than the challenge. It depends. If you just decided that you want to major in musical theater within the last year and you know you're behind on a lot of the things that your peers have been doing, you might want to have a larger safety portion of your, 3. Whereas if you have been doing this for a long time, you've got 10 years of dance, 10 years of voice, 10 years of acting, you've done a couple professional productions, you've had agents express interest in you, you've done a bunch of summer workshops, then you can probably weight yourself a little bit more on the reach side of things. Have some challenge schools and then have a couple safeties just to be careful. So
There's a
this is
great
very
question in the
individualized.
chat, Matt. Is
Yeah.
it possible to have a safety school where there's an audition involved?
Mm,
And do schools look for type and diversity and acceptances? So I'll take the first piece, you take the second piece.
great.
So
Yep.
is it possible to have a safety school where there's an audition involved? Yes. Not all safety schools are necessarily non-audition programs. So they might not have a pre-screen, but there are several that are more than several that are really strong that still have an audition that we would consider because of what Matt was saying as far as number of applicants more in the safety category.
And so there's a school, for instance, just to keep this in mind too, safety does not mean low quality. Safety sometimes is a new program with new faculty and they have low applicants. So I can think of a school I visited about 10 years ago, and that school was seeing 75 to 100 applicants a year. They had a major performer take the role at that university. By the time that major performer left, they were in the 500 and 600 plus applicant range, and they are no longer a safety. They are competitive. And so, safety that and the students that are leaving that program are working. They're doing really, really well. It was a great program when I was there 10 years ago. People just didn't know about it because it was new. It didn't have a track record, so people weren't sure if they wanted to trust it or not. That's just normal human nature. New things people don't always trust, no matter how good it appears to be. But that person who ran that program grew it. And I know of several people right now that are at schools that I would consider safety schools because I've had conversations with them about how to recruit. And I know that once the word spreads, it's no longer going to be a safety school, it's going to be a challenge. So safety does not equate to quality. Safety is all about change and how new the program is, and where they are. Sometimes there's schools just in the middle of nowhere, and they're going to always struggle to grow because of the state that they're in, but they really have good faculty. And so they're always going to be a bit of a safety because they're not going to have students flocking to them like students flock to the schools near New York City, right? Because so many students do think they need to be in New York, whether
And
they
I mean,
actually do
these are
or
the
not.
labels for this presentation we're using: reach, challenge, safety. There are a
Yeah.
lot of different terms for it. I just say you want a balanced list. Um, as you know, as a counselor, my goal is to make sure that my students have a balanced list, and at the end of the day, they have multiple options so they can find the right school that's the best fit for them. Because we're talking right now specifically about the musical theater program, but like I mentioned before, it's a 4-year investment to also just like growing to be an adult and being away in college and learning those types of skills. So when you factor in also where you feel most comfortable, where you feel like you fit in, it fits your budget, it fits your distance from home, things like that. There are certainly other things. And then Matt, the other part of the question, and I think you have it later, if you want to address it now real quick, is whether or not type. Sorry, let me read it specifically to make sure that anonymous attendee is being heard. Do schools look for a type and diversity in acceptances?
So this is one where I just can't speak for all 200 programs that there are. I don't know. I know a lot of faculty for whom the answer is yes. So my philosophy when recruiting that my colleagues share with me, that I know that other people at other institutions share, is that we want a program that is representative of the world that we live in. So if you think about that, if I go to a mall and I walk around the mall, I'm going to see usually, especially if I'm in a big city, a pretty fair representation of what the world looks like. When I look at my musical theater program and the students in it, I really should have a body of students that looks like what I see when I go to the mall. Because if I don't, how is my audience going to come to a show and identify with the people they see in the show? If they come and they see people that don't look anything like them, unless it's a specific show where they're coming to, it's based off of a certain culture, they aren't going to want to keep coming back time and time again if every show looks nothing like them, if it doesn't share their cultural values. So what we're seeing more and more in the theater world is that movement to have programs that represent the world that we live in and what it looks like. So if a program is adopting that philosophy, they are trying to bring in a wide variety of types, and types ends up becoming a non-thing. So like I'm not, when I recruit, looking for, a soubrette, or like the young girl next door. I'm not. I'm looking for what comes in the door that has incredible talent that I can sit back and go, wow, we have no one like that in our program. That person is really cool. I may not even be able to categorize them. If they're really, really talented, really special, I'm in, right? Ideally, we are going to have racial diversity in the program. I say ideally because the number of students who are racially diverse auditioning for college programs is around 20 to 25% from the data I've seen. I've got some data from one of the pre-screening companies that manages pre-screens. The students age 18 and under, their racial ethnic diversity is about 50% plus. So you see a student audition pool that does not look like the current high school student body. So no matter what a university does, they have limits on how diverse their program can be because our audition pool is just not diverse. And so a lot of us are trying to do work to change that situation. But right now we're kind of stuck. If you really realize that you don't have people from a specific ethnicity or race or religious background and no one auditions, there's nothing you can do as much as you want to. So you have to keep that in mind as you're looking for schools. But I don't think anybody is discriminating in the way that they may have been 15, 20 years ago. There's
Matt,
probably
let me
not.
go ahead and take this one here with
Yeah.
college visits. Guys, there's a finite number of resources that every family has to put through this process. Every year, when I was at Shenandoah or the past couple years that I've been independent, I have students that come to me and they have fallen in love with a particular school because they visited and it was amazing and it was the first campus they've been on. And unfortunately kind of sets you up a little bit for some heartbreak. So what I've always believed, and I believe Matt's on the same page as me, is that if it makes sense to go somewhere in your region, a small school, a big school, get on campus, get a feel for the difference between a big school and a small school, what the vibe is, that's awesome. That is more beneficial at the end of, well, anytime junior year, start of the summer between junior and senior year, than it is to go on a huge road trip where you're circling the Northeast and the Midwest for 2 weeks to hit 10 musical theater programs. If you want to visit a school, I always recommend, if possible, you either wait until after you pass your pre-screen or after you have an actual offer to that school. A lot of times when you are able to visit a school once you've gotten in, you also get access to more things. You can sit in classes, you can go to lunch, you can see some additional things like that. So unless you have a money tree in your backyard, my recommendation is always to save your resources for your auditions and for visiting schools after you've actually gotten in.
Yep. And this is where, for the teachers who are tuned in, you can really help, guide them towards what schools in the state might really give them the experience of a really big theater program versus a smaller theater program, or a big music school versus a small one. Use your NATS community to, start to identify places where students could go get an idea of what each one of these looks like. Because admissions are so competitive at some of these schools, most musical theater voice teachers at competitive schools do not give free trial lessons. So I know in vocal performance programs, trial lessons are really common. They're not common on the musical theater side, simply because it feels inequitable if we give lessons to 5 people and then start saying, no, we can't do anymore. So we just say no from the start. Most people will give lessons after the student is accepted into the program. At that point in time, then you're down to 36 people that you're trying to manage versus 1,000. Schools with fewer applicants might, though. That might be part of their recruiting, is to offer lessons. Don't ask the faculty, ask the admissions counselor. The faculty get overwhelmed. You're going to get a better response if you reach out to the admissions department to find out if the faculty offer that or not. Schools are going to have open houses, virtual options as well, so look for the virtual options. Just make sure, if you're going to commit, or your student is going to commit to going to one of these, that they are offering something musical theater specific. Like, for instance, at Shenandoah, they hold some days where musical theater is not involved, and then people end up disappointed that they came and were not available to talk, we're out of town. So you want to make sure that you're getting something that's going to fit what your student wants, and they don't assume that everything's going to be there that day. Now, this is so important. I cannot emphasize this enough. So teachers, please get all of your students doing this. And students who are watching, fix this today. You need to pick one email address. Shouldn't be your high school provided one.
If you use your high school one, you're not going to get half the messages you need to from schools, because your firewalls are so high. It's gonna be hard for you to move things around, to share things. I go through this with my students all the time. Create one email just for everything college.
Just that. You're going to use one version of your name. You're going to pick which one you want to use. One phone number, and you're going to use this throughout every communication you do, because every university now has these customer relations management systems, CRM systems. And once you correspond with them one time, they put you in. And what we've found happening at Shenandoah is people use 2 and 3 different names, and they start getting 2 and 3 different email answers. So they'll get an email that you've been rejected from the program because you never submitted your pre-screen. But you did, under a different email address. And you're not actually rejected. We want to see you live. But now you think you are because of the different emails. So you really want to make sure you pick one and stick to it. And Holly added this in here too, is to make sure that your parent or guardian has access to it so they can help you with it, can help you manage this. You're going to get a lot of things coming through here. The one thing, teachers, too, as you're doing this, is that you really need to encourage your students to take ownership of the process. They have to take the lead. And this is just an honest thing that I have witnessed as a coach when I was coaching high school students. Those students who cannot handle the application progress always struggle when they get to school. I have never worked with one student who struggled in the application process who did well when they went to the institution. It's a really tough major. It is a major that sometimes starts with 8 a.m. dance class and ends with 11 o'clock at night rehearsal. And then they have to run home, try to do homework, stay organized, and get everything done before they wake up to be at the next 8 a.m. class. So anything that you can do to get them resources, counseling, therapy, whatever they need to learn to manage anything that is blocking them from taking the lead is a gift that will keep giving for them as they, progress throughout this career. But really try to resist, and any of the parents that are in here watching, resist doing it for the student. Sometimes the students have the realization, I've seen this on more than one occasion myself working with high school students, that when I start telling them these are all the things you have to do and they say this is a lot, then we sit down and talk about what the degree looks like. They have a change of heart and realize that maybe they don't want to do this. They enjoy the fun of being in a show, but if this is how serious the whole rest of their career is going to be, maybe this isn't what they want. Some of those students have chosen BA programs because they've realized they want to be involved in theater, but they don't want to be a hardcore performer that's having to constantly manage auditioning for the next show and the next show. And they go on to become great arts administrators. So there is a place for them in this world. They just need to figure out which place they belong. So here's the question that I know is on a lot of people's minds. Is hiring an outside consultant worth it? As voice teachers, should we be pushing our students to work with outside coaches simply for auditions, or should we take this role on ourselves? And I am going to tell you, we are about to open a can of worms. And so full disclosure, I am friends with these audition coaches. Shenandoah does participate in some of these auditions that these audition coaches hold. We look at it as an equity issue because a lot of these audition coaches do have special grants available for low-income students, and those low-income students can only audition in these spaces. And so we know that us going to them where they can audition for 15 schools at once while they're struggling as a low-income student is so important. I was a low-income student when I was in high school. I was in a family that was living off of unemployment, and trying to travel to one school 2 hours away was cost prohibitive because of the price of gas and food in a hotel. So we see it as an equity thing that we're doing to advantage the students. I don't think it gives students a special advantage. I just think it is a convenience, and we on the university side think that it's helping those kids who are economically disadvantaged. College coaches, though, provide some really awesome services that you as a voice teacher may not be able to offer your students. They see patterns. One of the coaching firms I counted last night or a couple nights ago, they have about 300 people that they worked with last year. If they're working with 300 people a year, they're seeing patterns you're never going to see. They are having conversations with program heads that you're not able to have. They know what the talent pool looks like over the past 10 years. They've worked with 3,000 people over 10 years. When your student goes in for a consultation, they're going to have an idea of where they fit. They know which schools give money, which ones don't. So if your student is price conscious, they have information to offer. They've been on the campuses themselves. They know when faculty have moved. They know where those up and coming programs are. They know what rep is overdone, what schools are looking for in applicants. They can help students sell themselves, identify all the different schools, and stay organized. They offer a lot. 10 years ago, 15 years ago, I'll be honest, if you heard me talk 10, 15 years ago, you know I was kind of on the fence because I felt like a lot of these college audition firms only had one or two people doing all the work, and I wasn't always convinced that the one or two people were giving each student individual attention. I wasn't always convinced that what the guidance they were being given was worth the price that was being charged. Today, these same groups now offer packages that include online courses, special podcasts that are only available to their clients, workshops, webinars, one-on-one guidance, one-on-one coaching, and private auditions. The money, if a student can afford it, can be worth it. And that's the key. If they can't afford it, it's worth it. Not because it's opening up a door or doing something magical that the student couldn't have accomplished on their own, but because it is giving them more educational opportunities than they're going to have alone with you in one-on-one lessons. You can go it alone if you have a local team. And so a local team to me consists of somebody who specializes in acting, somebody who is working with them on dance, who can help them film a dance pre-screen, knows what should be in that dance pre-screen. You working with them on voice, and you are a musical theater expert. You know how to help them really coach the style of each piece. You really know how to help them find roles that are ideal for them. And they have someone in their life, whether it's themselves, whether it's you, whether it's a parent, who can help them with application management. If you have this team, you don't need an audition coach. You're going to be fine. We accept students every year without audition coaches because they're the best students. And they have obviously done just fine because they don't only get into us, they get into other top programs as well. And they did it all without an audition coach. But pretty much across the board, they have a team. That team may be an excellent performing arts center, a performing arts high school, a theater company that they work with, but they have somebody in that's got their back that's coaching them through everything that they need to do. And this is one of the places where Holly thrives. And so there's some things outside of the performance aspect of this that we also need to keep in mind. So I asked Holly to kind of talk about some of those things.
Yeah, real quick before I get in that, Matt, we had a question in the Q&A that I've given my opinion, but I said that I would also ask you for yours. So the
Okay,
question
great.
is whether or not it's recommended to get an agent. My opinion is that an agent would not be helpful in any way for the process of applying and auditioning for musical theater programs at the point of applying for college.
Yeah.
What is your
So
opinion?
an agent has nothing to do with our process. I've never in my 15 years at Shenandoah talked to an agent. Um, if a student has an agent, it says two things. It says one that they might be trying to get out of school instead of sitting there for 4 years. That's not a bad thing. It's not the end of the world. I'm okay with that. Some schools may not be. Um, it can be an indication the student's going to want to constantly be auditioning, and if we know our curriculum is really rough and the student can't audition, then it might be rough for them. We also spend all their senior year trying to get them an agent. So if they already got one, what are we going to do senior year? So I wouldn't go find an agent. If you happen to land in the hands of a good agent, a really good agent, a New York City based agent, because New York musical theater is New York City based, unless you want to target the Chicago or LA market or another market. But if you find somebody really, really good and you get signed, like Resolute Artists is like, I want to pick you up, then yeah, I would take it. But I mean, if we're looking at like a more regional agent, not necessarily. I mean, if you're talking about an agent that does independent films and is going to help you get cast in those on your breaks, then go for it. That's not, or modeling work, go for it. But you don't need one.
Cool, agree. All right, y'all. So staying on top of deadlines. So real quick, mentioned earlier that we have the college admissions process and then we have the musical theater admissions process. So what I say to all of my families to keep it really simple is we have the admissions nerds, and I can say that because I'm an admissions nerd. So the admissions nerds are looking at your university application, your transcripts, your letters of recommendation, supplemental essays specific for the university, and depending on the school, test scores. Test scores, at least for the class of 2025, and I would kind of make the assumption that a lot of schools are going to stay test optional, are not given the weight they used to, with the exception of in the musical theater world, there's like maybe 5 schools that still have a lot on test scores. Anyway, so you have the stuff that you're applying to for the nerds. So when I work with my kids, I always say, think of your audience. Is this essay going to the nerds or is it going to the department? So to keep it simple, I call the department the talented people. So the nerds and the talent. So when you're like, okay, this is Shenandoah doesn't have it unless they've thrown a curveball. But some departments have, some of the talented people departments have specific personal statements or supplemental essays that they want you to answer. So if you have essays for both sides, you don't want to use the same thing. You don't want to be one note, just a theater kid. You want to tell the university about you as a person and your experiences. You want to tell the nerds, and then you want to tell the talented people about your passion and experience in theater, for example. So when we're looking at deadlines, they run parallel, but at different rates. So you 9.9 times out of 10 will apply to the university. So the nerds first. I'm going to go through the soapbox real quick. I have kids all the time that come to me or families and they say, well, I can't apply to that school yet because I don't have my transcripts ready. My essay isn't done. And my letters of recommendation are not sent yet. And I'm like, okay. Applying to a school, applying to the nerds, basically creates an electronic folder that says, for example, this is Holly Johnson's application. Everything else that comes in for Holly Johnson goes in that folder. You don't need to have everything come together at once. You want to create that folder and then have everything come in. If you get if you send something too early and that folder's not there, sometimes it can get lost. So don't wait for everything, it'll slow you down. So you apply to the nerds first, usually, and then once that is established, some schools you have to get your academic acceptance first before you can do anything with the department. It's complicated. Every school is different. But please, if you take anything from what I just said, do not wait to submit everything at one time. Submit your application to the university, and the university piece comes first as far as submission wise. Essays, I touched on that. You could have essays for the university and for the department. It's never too early to start writing essays, and there's no such thing, in my opinion, of a wasted written word. So I have some students that come to me and they say, Holly, I have 3 ideas, and I wrote 2 paragraphs of each of them to get started. And we end up deciding on one to flesh out. And then down the road, there's another school that has a question that fits better with one of the other options that they had created. So you're always going to use what you've already written. Keeping materials organized. Yeah, I love a spreadsheet personally, but it's totally up to your family for sure. Time management is key. The best advice I can give you there to keep it simple is carve out a window of time every week. So, you have your specific rehearsal times during the week. You have your specific time for your voice lesson. You have your specific time for your dance classes. You make a specific time that you dedicate to college prep every week. So maybe it's 2 hours on a Sunday afternoon, and 1 hour you're working on essays, and the other hour you're sitting down with a parent or guardian, and you're looking at things, you're checking things, you're going into portals, you're filling out applications, that kind of thing. If you think of it as an assignment every week and you carve out that space in your life, that's what you do, it's not optional, then time management won't be a problem. And then communicating with admissions representatives. This happens in some different ways. It's important for them to know who you are. Although we've been talking about this entire time, the fact that sometimes schools are having 1,000+ applicants. So with 1,000 musical theater applicants, it's hard for the admissions nerds to remember exactly who you are. But once you pass a pre-screen, super nice. When you get the email that says, congratulations, you passed your pre-screen, we'd like you to go ahead and schedule audition. Go ahead and respond. Oh my gosh, thank you so much. I'm so excited. I can't wait to see campus, or I can't wait to meet the faculty, blah, blah, blah. Then when you have your audition scheduled, not just with admissions reps, but with the faculty, send a quick email, and you can always send it to admissions and say, dear admissions rep, please share my appreciation for the time that Matt, Kevin, and Patrick and Shiloh gave me during my audition this past weekend. It was great to meet them, blah, blah, blah. You want to stay at the top of their mind without seeing like you're needy and a little bit annoying. So and always start with the admissions rep. The admissions rep will send the information to the faculty as needed. Although I do know some people that still like a good handwritten thank you note.
Yep. So and one thing I would just say is that the admissions people do tell us if you're really nice. They also tell us if you're high maintenance. And so I think, like, if we have somebody, or if they're rude, I have gotten messages, or people, I'll run into our admissions person and they'll be like, so-and-so is so rude. And honestly, if you are being rude to our amazing admissions people, what are you going to do once you're in the program?
And it's not even the admissions people, y'all. This happened when I was in SU. It happened when I was in music in my undergrad with my clients in the last couple of years at multiple schools. If you go in to your audition and you're not the best version of yourself, somebody, whether it's a current student, it's a faculty, whatever, if they see you being a jerk or being too arrogant or rubbing somebody the wrong way and they just get the ick, they're going to tell the faculty. And they can be selective enough that even if you're the bee's knees, you're in a cohort program. You need to work well with others. So just always be, the moment you step on campus, your audition has started. Kind of think about it that way.
And I'd say that, teachers, I know that you all know this as performers, and so sometimes you feel like you're telling the student this, and are they listening or not? But I think this is just driving it home to them, is we are paying attention to how you treat everybody. And so, you know, the advice that you've been giving them for years is spot on during this process. So one other thing I did want to mention on the coaching thing too is personal opinion. There may be people who disagree out there from other institutions, but I think the college coaching services that expose you to multiple people, who expose you to college faculty from different institutions, and are not built around one or two personalities as the entire coaching service, are more, unless you're doing local, right? If you're doing local and that's what your local is and they're excellent, fine. But if you're going to pay for a national group, I think you want to pay for the national group that has multiple people involved. Because to be truthful, art is subjective. And we have lots of different opinions about what's good or not amongst all the different college reps. What I like at Shenandoah may be very different when somebody likes at another institution. And there's nothing wrong with that. But if you only have two people guiding the whole thing, then you're only getting 2 bits of information, and then the student feels like those are the only 2 bits. But when a student is exposed to 10, 20 people throughout the process, they start to see this variability in opinion. Then they start to realize, oh, I have to stay true to myself. And they're more likely to find somebody who is going to support them in staying true to themselves. And so I do think that the more people that are involved, the better. When it comes to pre-screening, I would first try to target reach and challenge schools and start getting those videos in early. So Holly had mentioned this to me, that some schools have like these rolling dates where they send out their first set of notifications on October 15th, November 15th, December 15th. I think those are just good dates in general, just to kind of keep in mind because they track with the semester. So I would say your early things really need to be in by October 15th.
And when I brought that up, I don't think I said Matt, but remember what we just went with the nerds and the talented people. So if you know that if your plan is to have your pre-screen in by October 15th, back that up. Your application needs to have been in prior to that. And we're not talking the night before, the day before. I would give it at least 10 days. So you need to be thinking, if your goal is to submit your pre-screen on October 15th, you need to have applied academically to that school no later than October 5th.
Yeah, great advice. And so, you know, I think that October the 15th, 16th. Ideally, I think, was it you that came up with pre-screen before Halloween?
I sure did. It was,
That's what I
I
thought.
want to say it was like 2013.
Yeah, it's
And I
great
like tried to
advice.
make it was too early to try to make it a thing, like hashtag pre-screen or Halloween pre-screen. I should bring that back, but
You should
yes,
bring it back.
that was me. Yeah.
But yeah, pre-screen by Halloween, that's great advice. When we get those pre-screens in the initial, so pre-screens for us start coming in 1 week. I'm not going to watch them. I'm going to let them accumulate. And I'm going to wait until there's probably 100 of them in the file. Then on those 100, I'm going to watch them, and I'm not going to make decisions on them when I watch them the first time. I'm just going to get to know the pile because every year it's different. Then after that 100, I'm going to go in and I'm going to start making some decisions, and there's going to be some people I will not make a decision on right away. I'm going to wait. Then I'll wait until the next 100 come in, and I'll see if that 100 compares to the first 100. And if they do, then I start going, okay, so this is what the pool is this year. Then as 300 and 400 come in, I'm starting to get a little bit more immediate in my decision making, and I'm starting to get a little bit more picky because in that first 200, I'm looking at it and I'm going, well, I think that could be really, really good. I really like that and where that can go. So I want to see them. By 400, I'm starting to go, well, I like them, but I remember that I saw so-and-so who was a little bit stronger. Maybe we already have enough people like that. I don't know. And then I'm on the fence. By 500 to 700, I am definitely going, do we have anybody like that or not? Are they the best of the best of what we've seen? Because it's just how the decision-making process works. I try to make it better every single year than what it is. Other schools may have different processes. Some of this just may be us. But you really do start then getting the stragglers, the last 250 people who come in the last week. And at that point in time, you've already watched a lot of people. You wonder how interested they are in the school if they waited until literally the last day to submit their pre-screen. And audition slots are filling up. So you're starting to be really, really, really picky. So that's why you want to get in early instead of getting in late. The other thing that this is going to help you find out is that if you're not getting good results. If you get great results and you pass a bunch of pre-screens, then you have a good balance of schools. If you send out 15 pre-screens, you get rejected from 12 of them, your balance of your schools wasn't right. If you know that by October 15th, you can adjust and resubmit a new batch by November 15th or December 15th. December 15th is the cutoff for a lot of schools. So getting them in early, if you're not sure where you stack up, is going to give you time to change things up. Some people, teachers on this side, view these pre-screenings as something negative, especially when they first came out. I was one of the first people to jump on board on the pre-screening thing, again, because of being a low-income student. I really view these pre-screens as a financially responsible thing to do on our side, because I know my university is expensive to get to. You got to fly to DC, then you got to rent a car, you got to drive an hour, then you got to stay in a hotel for at least 2 nights. I don't want you doing that trip unless we know we're interested in you. And so by doing these pre-screens, it's not a slight if a student doesn't pass it. It's literally us kind of doing the student a favor and saying, you're not necessarily piquing our interest, and I don't want you to spend $1,500 with your family to come to our school for us to be further confirmed that you're not piquing our interest. Sometimes we see people at a live audition, like we'll do a cattle call audition somewhere that didn't pass the pre-screen, and I can't remember ever reversing my decision. So the pre-screens are a pretty accurate picture, and we know what we need or we don't need on any given year. So most schools nowadays, not all, but most are going with these common pre-screen guidelines, and accepted is where they're posted right now. So grab those links at the bottom. I did a tiny URL for you so you could just write down, what is that, 5, 8 letters there.
I'll put it in the chat too.
Find it. Perfect, thank you. Basically, a bunch of us universities came together and thought our requirements are all over the place. This isn't fair to students. We need to try to come up with a common, unified agreement of what we want to see that makes life easier for the students. And so we have all these requirements I'm going to show you, and we are cutting the bars and just getting down to the seconds. So it's 60 to 90 seconds. You have 3 options. Option A is you do one song written before 1970. So that's what we all consider, have agreed to consider the golden age. We could have that debate all night long, whether it's golden age or not. And then, so it's in option A, you can also choose non-musical theater, and then one song written after 1970. If you go this option, I would make sure that one of them is musical theater. I would not send in 2 pop songs, but I think 1 musical theater, 1 pop song is fine for this option. Option number 2 requires a musical theater song, but it's from any time period, and then it gives you a second chance to pull another song. If pop rock is not your thing, don't send it in. The reason schools ask for pop rock is because that is overwhelmingly being asked for more than musical theater anymore on auditions. There's a whole lot of reasons that they do that. To keep it brief, because it's not really the topic for this webinar, but to keep it brief, when you get an actor in there not trying to play a character, you get to see more of their authentic self, and you get to hear more of their authentic musicality. And when you see that, it takes away anything that they think you want to see, and it makes it easier to cast them. So that's why people do it. Those of us on the college side now know that our students are going to be marketable, plus there's a ton of pop rock musicals. And so we want to attract people who are good at that already, because it is really, really marketable. And option C is what we do at Shenandoah, where the school leaves it up to the applicant. If schools are giving you option C, they literally want to see what you're best at. They just want you to show them your 2 best things. So teachers, don't second guess the option C and what are they trying to get. They literally just want your student to do what they do well. So just bring 2 things that let you be seen really, really, really well. If you are trying to audition to a school that does not agree with or does not follow the common pre-screen requirements, in general, keep in mind that a 16-bar cut is around 30 seconds and a 32-bar cut is around 60 seconds. Some schools used to be really, really strict about it. Once it was 16, they'd stop playing the piano. I don't know that that happens as much anymore, but I wouldn't be pushing it. I think that if you end up at 18 to 20 measures on a 16, that's okay. I think doing some of the tricks that I've seen talked about and written about, where you take something that's in 2/4 and you rewrite it in 4/4 so that it's actually 16 bars instead of 32, which it would have been if it was in 2/4, bad idea. Don't do that. Stick to the seconds and stick to the bars, right? The people playing the piano, they know how many bars that actually was. There was a question that came in about contrasting songs. The choices are endless. Often they spin on this just for months. I'm going to keep going back to the same thing over and over again with rep. Do what you do best. In vocal performance auditions, we're dealing with students or music education majors who are trying to sing classically with an instrument that's not usually made yet to sing classically. We know that the singing voice reaches maturity in the 20s. And we know that opera singers really start picking up in their career in their later 20s, early 30s. So schools often look for potential when they're interviewing high school students and auditioning them and thinking about where this voice might go. In musical theater, these kids could be cast tomorrow. We're not looking for what they can almost do. We're looking for what they can nail right now. So if they can not really sing Golden Age, lyrical, classically influenced, what some people call legit, then don't do it. Save it for the live audition, unless you know the school really wants to hear that. Because you're sending in something you don't really do, and that's not showing you off at your best. If you're not really a belter, then don't belt. Because if I hear a really great soprano who is then skrelting, if you know what skrelting, that's a combination of screaming and belting, it's not going to be as exciting to me as if I just saw them do two soprano songs that they could absolutely nail. So first of all, nail it. Look at this list, which comes from the common pre-screens. You're going to do fast and slow, sustained or speech-like, dramatic, comedic, belt and head. Just make sure they're different. It's not that complicated. I know the students want to make it overly complicated and try to mind read the process, but it's just not. We just want to see two different sides of you. Show us some contrast so we can get a fuller picture of who you are and what makes you you as an artist. So they're going to try to dwell, they're going to try to go into a looping pattern with this, but keep trying to pull them out and remind them, if you are the best that you can be, that's literally all you can control. You can't control if there are 5 other people like you already in the program. You could be the best you could be and you will not get in because there's 5 people already like you, right? But if you're the best that you can be, then you're staying true to you and your artistic soul, and that matters so much. If you go through any part of this process on a lie, like you think that who you are at your core is not interesting to people, and you try to be what you think they want you to be, you're lying to yourself, and in your audition, you're lying to the panel. You're saying, I'm this, I'm an orange, when really you're an apple. If you go into a university as an orange and they really needed an orange, but you try to start being your true self as an apple, all of a sudden you don't necessarily fit into their plan. And that's not good for anybody. You're not going to be happy as a student. They're not going to be happy as a program. Some will be fine with it, but others can be more picky about it. You have to stay true to you. We had a question come in. What does optional mean? It literally means optional. Holly, you want to say that? You've got good for this?
Oh my gosh, I've been preaching this for 13 years. Optional means optional, whether it's a dance submission, if it's a wild card, or academically, if it's optional test scores, you evaluate where you are in comparison to where you think the rest of the applicants are. So with test scores, we look at if it's optional, we look at what's called the middle 50% of students that were admitted the year before. And this is public information. I'm not giving you like secrets of education. You can find it on our website. So you say, okay, so it looks like last year, most people that sent in test scores that were accepted had 1,200 to 1,700, but I only have a 990 and it's optional. Don't send it. If you don't identify as a dancer first, or at least on par with your singing and acting, do not send a dance. Wild card, be very careful and think about what you're going to send. You want to share a part of yourself that you think is really important for the faculty to know or see, like a different talent. Like a lot of people don't know this, but Matt's a crazy good pianist. And he could just kind of off the top of his head, this is what we're doing. So if Matt was pre-screening, obviously we know he can sing. I've seen him act before too. He's not so bad. Dancing, I'm not sure, Matt. I don't think I've seen you dance.
Terrible. It's awful.
But for his wild card, maybe he's technology. Maybe he wants to play the guitar and then film and put on top of it him playing the piano. Those are really great skills to share that could be helpful for the faculty to know more about your talent. Matt and I have seen some things. We have seen some wild cards that should not have existed. They're entertaining, but at the end of the day, do not treat a wild card as just one more minute that you can be in front of the faculty. If you decide to do a wild card, you need to think about how it counts. I've got a kid this year who is from New Orleans, and she's very passionate about her Creole heritage. So her wild card is going to be talking about her culture in the way that she's going to evaluate eating 4 different kinds of gumbo. And in between talking about gumbo, she's going to talk about how important it is to her of her Creole tradition. That's not a necessary talent of eating gumbo, but you get to know who she is from that. So I don't know. I could
I
go
want
off
to see
on
that one.
wild cards.
No, but that's great. That's a really
I
great
think I
advice.
have her applying for Shenandoah, so yeah.
Cool. I love it. So one other thing I will say, in my opinion on the dance thing, is this. If you know that the school is a financial reach for you to travel to do the audition, and you know that they seem to be dance heavy, it could be in your best interest to go ahead and send in the dance video and break that ice now. So like if you know that it's going to cost you 2,000.
Especially if you're in California and you know you're not a dancer and you're auditioning for a dancey school, do it at the pre-screen so you're not wasting your time and money.
Yeah.
Yeah,
'Cause we'd
great
hate
point,
to
Matt.
see you fly like, fly across the country for something. So, I mean, you can use that but if you're going to a general New York audition where there's 20 schools at once and you're not a good dancer, don't send your dance video. Let them figure it out when you get there because you're already going to the place right now. Stick to the time and measurement requires within 10%, I would say. Don't go wildly over. There are some people that get very irritated by it. I'm
We have a
fine.
question actually about that specifically.
Yep.
Hi there. Is it a bad thing if some of my pieces for the pre-screen are not 60 seconds, but they take up the whole time? For instance, some of mine are 45 seconds.
Oh, not at all. Leave us wanting more. I love it when you just come up and you show us and you just leave it on the table and you're like, I showed you everything I needed to in 45 seconds. I'm in. One of the strategies you can do is leave us wanting more. Leave us having a reason to call you onto campus so we can see more of what you do. Because that's really we'll get here in a minute, but it's a callback. So yeah, get us interested. Someone asked for a list of current Don't Sing rep. So I really used to be known for having one of the biggest Do Not Sing rep lists online. I started it at a time when the musical theater anthology was the main source of college audition songs, and we were seeing songs 50 times an audition cycle. It was just nonstop. And I put it out there because it wasn't serving students well, because they were just always going to those MT anthology books, and we were seeing the same thing over and over again. That's not the case anymore. Now people can get on musicnotes.com and they can find songs from all over the place. For a do not or an overdone song, the most I saw last year was maybe 8 people doing the same song. And so it's really not a big deal with 8. So I don't really go by the do not sing anymore. In fact, I put a note on my blog that I don't suggest following this anymore. I think that you need to just find the songs that fit you best. Just know there's always a cost. If you're going to try to walk in and sing Don't Rain on My Parade, you better have the best version of Don't Rain on My Parade that I have heard this year, or one of the best 3. Because I have heard that song 1,000 times. I don't dislike it, and when people nail it, I'm impressed. So just make sure that you are picking that song because you do it so well, you're going to blow our mind that you are only 18 and you're doing this song, right? And then you'll be fine with it. Just in general, as you're putting together a rep list, teachers, just try to make sure that your students are doing the 2 best things that they can do. 2 best things. Show us what you can do now instead of potential. Acting is just important, if not more than the voice. There are plenty of schools where a voice teacher is not on the audition panel. So there's plenty of schools. The voice faculty have nothing to do with the audition process. They just teach the students when they arrive. You have the head of the program, who is usually an acting teacher, evaluating the process. They notice the acting way more than they notice the voice. So make sure that you have these songs tuned up as actors. I like to say sing to connect, not impress. If you're connecting with an invisible other, if you're connecting with your audience, that is what's impressive. From an 18-year-old, watching somebody who can connect with an invisible scene partner in their song and make me believe they're talking to somebody, that is something we can really do a lot with. And personalize the song. Don't try to. So I know in opera, we often think about trying to sing, if I'm singing Non più andrai, I'm going to try to do it how Figaro would and get into the character of him. That's not what we're doing, though, on the musical theater side. Instead, you want to personalize it. You want to sing If I Loved You as if you were talking to somebody that you have a crush on, but you don't want to let them know, and you're trying to kind of tease out if they maybe like you. And you want to have that student thinking about the person they would actually sing this to and how they would try to say this to that person instead of thinking how they would perform that song in the show carousel. So how do audition panels feel about transposing songs? Do it. Just maintain the character of the song. Don't take Defying Gravity down a fifth. It loses the feeling of the song. But in general, you can transpose things down. These students are 18. Look, even with more older students, we transpose stuff down for our graduating seniors to make it fit their voice better, and we have not had any negative feedback about it. What about gender bending songs? Go for it. I think it actually allows you to show something different. When I hear, soprano alto coming in singing Maria from West Side Story, I think of the song in a whole new way, and that student stands out as being really unique. So don't do it just to do it, but if there's a song you're absolutely in love with and you feel like it just shows you off to the absolute best of your abilities, then by all means sing it, use it. Choosing the right pieces to sing seems to be a daunting task when trying to stay away from overdone. Do you have any advice on finding the right songs? Indeed, I do. So let's go through it. It's called Chasing the Carrot. Okay? I just made a TikTok about this. It's available on TikTok and Instagram. So if you want the 90-second version that you can send to your students, this is where it's at. Just jump on over to @Edwards_voice. What you're going to do is you're going to get on YouTube and you're going to find performers who are similar to you, right? You're going to tell your student, go find performers that are similar to you. You're going to tell them to write their names down on the left column of a spreadsheet. Then you're going to tell them, ideally we want to find Broadway performers just because there's more information available about them. You're going to then go to ibdb.com. This is the Internet Broadway database. And you are going to pop in the name of one of these shows or one of these performers, right? So you can either go roles that you're perfect for, or you can go performers that are just like you. So for this example, we're taking a role you're perfect for. You know you're perfect for Wednesday Addams in the Addams Family. You're going to go on over to ibdb.com, look up the Addams Family. You're going to find the original production of it. You're going to click on that original production and you're going to select opening night cast. And you are going to find out that Wednesday Addams was played by Krista Rodriguez. You're going to write that down on your spreadsheet. Then you're going to go and look at all the roles that Krista has played, and you're going to write them across the row next to Krista Rodriguez's name with role 1, role 2, role 3, row 4 as the column headers, just as many as you need. You are then going to go back to the main page. You can go off of IBDB, look up personal websites, look up Wikipedia pages, and again, write down every role that you find. Then you're going to go, and next to opening night cast, you're going to see this list that says replacement casts. You're going to click on the replacement cast button, and it's going to show you the understudies and other people who played that role. You are going to pick that name. So we see that Morgan James and Jessica Lee Patty both performed Wednesday. You're going to put them on the left side of your spreadsheet. Then you're going to go down the rabbit hole of IBDB, their personal websites, and Wikipedia, and find every role that they played. Eventually, you're going to have a spreadsheet that looks like this. What the spreadsheet is telling us is that people who play Wednesday Addams also seem to do Spring Awakening. They also seem to do Natalie and Next to Normal, right? And there's possibilities of other roles in here, like Alice in Wonderland or Casey in First Date. So these are all roles that actors who played the role that you know you're ideal for also played. So this is a good idea of things that could be good and give you good rep. If you go down the actor's name, you're going to be going, oh, I am really a lot like, Jennifer Damiano. What roles did she play? Then you'll find the roles, then you'll find out who else played those roles, and then you'll get more actors' names. So you're just going to keep doing this, cross-referencing names, shows, and building out your spreadsheet. You're then going to go on a deep dive trying to find the songs that this person would have sung in that role, and then start a new list full of songs that you might want to check out. Now, a website that can be really good for this work is Musical Theater Songs. This is run by Stephen Gross, who's a Broadway music director who also teaches at Temple University. This is a great app. You can put in the vocal range that you're looking for. You can put in character age, voice type, tempo. You can see all the variables on the screen. And it'll give you songs that you can find as well that might be a good fit for you. Again, you want to make sure it aligns with you as a character type. Another great place to find audition songs is by going through senior showcases. So all you got to do is look Senior Showcase Musical Theater on YouTube, and you're going to find a bunch of them. Go through and watch what songs they used. People thought those songs were good enough to be used to get a student an agent. If it was good enough for that, it should be good enough for you to use for a college audition. You can go to the New Musical Theater website if you want to find new musical rep. I would say be cautious with this. Some of this isn't as good of rep as people think it is. And some people don't love the new musicals, but other people find gems of songs. I find that the comedy songs that come off of these websites tend to be the best because it's something funny we haven't heard before. So we had what makes an effective audition cut and audition monologue, both in the pre-screening and live phase. Pick roles which you could be cast in now, not at 40, not at 50, right now. This advice comes from my 2 acting colleagues. I asked my acting professors at Shenandoah what they thought, and they said, stay in your age range. And that's the thing that I've heard everybody from any program ever say. Material that you have fun doing and have great confidence about doing is always going to make you shine. A complete arc, a beginning, a middle, and an end within the cut is going to make an ideal audition cut. And you want to have a need that needs to be met, an obstacle to getting that need, and a tactic that helps you overcome it. All right, these are just basic Stanislavski acting ideas. And we want to see you overcome the obstacle, hopefully in that cut. It needs to be something that the student is passionate about. If they're not passionate about it, it shows. I had a student audition one time and they sang a song and it was And I looked at them, I said, did you want to sing that audition song? They're like, well, no. And I said, well, what did you want to sing? And they told me what they wanted to sing. And they said their audition coach told them not to sing that. And I think it was because they were supposed to do pop because it was Shenandoah. And I was like, no, we want you to sing what you're best at. Can you do the thing you were told not to do? And the kid's eyes lit up. He sang this thing and blew us away. And I was like, you're in, first of all. But second of all, you know, that's what we get when you sing what you're passionate about. He was nervous about the other song. And so him walking in the room and singing something he was nervous around because he thought that's what we wanted almost lost him his audition. As I wouldn't have taken him based off of that performance. But when he sang what he loved, then he shined. So what makes an audition cut and audition monologue shine? Know the whole work really, really well. This again comes from my acting colleagues. You know the show, be able to talk about the show if we ask you about it. Plus, when you really know the show, we can see it in your performance and be able to explain why you like that piece with thoughtful reasoning. If I ask, what made you choose that song? It's a common interview question. And you're like, oh, my coach found it for me. That's not as interesting to me as if you said that was the first musical I ever saw. I loved it, or I grew up listening to this. My parents played this musical all the time on this cast recording, and I fell in love with it. Are there pieces to avoid? Older, more violent characters, overdone pieces, etc. Yep. So older and more violent for sure. I don't want to see a lot of violence. It's too much. It always goes over the top. I've never seen anybody do a good violent monologue or song that's made me be like, oh, that's great. No suicide, rape, underage sex, disabled characters if you're not disabled, and nothing full of profanity. And yes, I've seen every one of these things all way too many times. Enough to say it that it needs to be said. I saw every one of these, not the disabled. I didn't see the disabled last year, but the other stuff, I saw all of it. And it's just uncomfortable and awkward. And I'm not even joking. Like when you bring up some of these really things, my brother's roommate committed suicide the day before I had to go into auditions and had suicide monologues. So it's like, it's just, don't go there. Like bring light. You're a young person. You're 18 years old. Bring light into the world, right? Make it shine. Make us remember what it's like to fall in love. Don't go to this. These extremes don't do what you think they do. The only other thing to avoid is material created for underrepresented populations if you're not a member of that community. All right, so if you're not a member of the Latinx community about which Into the Heights was written, do not sing songs from Into the Heights. If you are not from the Black community, do not sing songs from Color Purple. All right, those songs are about a special cultural heritage that you do not identify with if you're not from that cultural heritage, and that music should be left alone. You can find other material. Where can we find appropriate monologues? Unfortunately, I hate to tell you this, but you got to read. And so you got to go start reading plays. So the best thing is to go to a bookstore, go to a school library, start flipping through plays, look in the front to see the character descriptions, find the characters that are similar to you, then go through and start looking for dialogue sections where you can take out the other person's dialogue and you can fill in the blanks. Honestly, this is way beyond of what I can cover in just a couple minutes on this. And so my real advice is they need to find an acting teacher. There are people who do monologue coachings online who can help guide the students towards some options that they could do. Holly was just telling me about somebody. You really need to refer out on this if you don't have experience with it. I work with monologues a lot with our students. I'm at the point that coaching high school students, I would refer out. I don't do it every day, all day, every day. I know there's people out there who are better at it than me. So, if you're a student, then read as many plays as you can. Just start diving through stuff until you find something. Again, watch senior showcases online and just the acting showcases instead. You can find great material there. But otherwise, I would try to get them out somewhere.
Matt, real quick, a question about
Yep.
monologues. We've been asked, what about gender bending for monologues? What's your take on that?
I think go for it. I think that people have loosened up a lot. And if that's something that's important to you, having that freedom and ability, do it. If the school doesn't like it and that was important to you, then it may not be a
That's
good
not the
fit.
school for you. Yeah.
It's not a school for you. If you're doing it just to try to stand out because you think that'll make you stick out, I wouldn't do it. Not unless you're absolutely passionate about the material. So this is all the comment. Holly said to me, we should try to get this done in 90 minutes. I was like, that'll be no problem. Holly, you were right. Yes, you know me well.
I've only known you for like 13 years. So.
But the
And you can
guidelines.
you also could spend way too much time on this because you're such a technology guy.
No, I'm not, everyone watching. I'm going to tell you to go look up the common pre-screen guidelines and follow them. All right, it's on the screen. I'm sending out the video, so if you don't get a chance to photo this, you're going to still be able to watch it on the video, and you'll just go to the college pre-screen website and you'll find it anyway.
Yeah, and real quick before Matt gets into some of the suggestions, don't pay money to have your pre-screens filmed. I mean, if that's in your resources and you know people, whatever, cool. But the average person, the average family, we see most pre-screens in living rooms, in churches, in your school choir room, on stage at school, in a black box. Um, it, yeah, it doesn't have to be a fancy production.
Not at all. Yeah, I always recommend do not spend the money. Now, if you're a teacher who offers this as a upsell and to help develop some income, I get it. You're not harming anything as long as you're not doing a
Oh,
2 and
no.
3 camera shoot. So don't go. The 2 and 3 camera shoots do not work well. I don't like them. I have hardly seen any this last 2 years, but I used to see them, and it doesn't work. So if you've got though a really nice DSLR camera and you've got all the proper lighting and you want to hook your students up, go for it. But don't feel like you have to go overboard. A cell phone video is more than enough. Dress in the world of the characters you want to play. So
But
that's
that doesn't
important.
mean wear a costume.
No, not a costume. What that means is like the young lady that's over here wanted to play more feminine identifying, female identifying roles, like shows like Carousel. So wearing this outfit, she felt really good about it, like it's something she would wear on a first date. And she sang rep that aligned with that, and that puts her in the world. Now, if she came in dressed like this and sang some Lady Gaga followed by American Idiot, this wouldn't be telling me really who she is. I'd rather that she came in with some Doc Martens, ripped up jeans, and a rock t-shirt with blue hair, if that's really who she was.
Are you
Then she
picking on
came
me
in.
because
I
of my
love
blue
your blue
hair?
hair. I love it. Good. But yeah, do that. Do what Holly does, right? But come in and be you. Just the you version of ripped jeans and Doc Martens that you would wear to a rock concert on a first date. Not the version that you just rolled out of bed and you threw it on to go to school. Find a background that's not distracting, good lighting. Film with a smartphone. Best piece of advice I can give kids and teachers, you can help them figure out what this is. Set a number of times you're going to film in a row. So say, I am going to film this cut 5 times in a row. Film it once, restart again. Just do your 5 times. Do not stop, do not analyze, do it 5 times. Because it's likely that around time 3 or 4, you're going to nail it. Because you're just like, I got to do this again, and then you're going to relax a little bit. Then at the end of 5, you can go back and look at it and see if you need to do any more takes or not. It's usually good to stop after that, because if it didn't get good in 5 takes, it's probably not going to get good in the next 5. You got to sell us something that's representative of where you really are. If you send in a flawless pre-screen, then you show up live on campus and it's not flawless, it's not going to work in your favor. So show us something that's accurate. Play your accompaniment from a Bluetooth speaker instead of a live accompanist. I don't want to take work away from live accompanists, but to be honest, when you're trying to do this over and over again, it's one less thing for your student to have as a variable in the room. Just let your student have an even accompaniment that's always going to be the exact same that they've listened to and practiced to 100 times. It's going to set them up for success. It goes with what we know about the cognitive science of learning. It lets them get in an automatic phase instead of trying to perform for us in the immediacy. It just doesn't work as well. If you are having a hard time finding a good sound quality and a good video quality in the room you are, I'm going to show you a trick. It's using 2 devices. So every room has what's called a critical distance. As the sound leaves your mouth it goes and it ricochets all over the room. And if you put your microphone here, it's going to mainly pick up the direct sound of your voice, which could be a little bit harsh. If you set it way far back, it's going to pick up all the room reverb, and that's going to make it sound not so great. You want to find the sweet distance where you get the ideal sound. So find the ideal sound space in the room, and then set up a microphone, can still be a smartphone over here to record an audio recording, your camera where you need to get your good camera angle, because a lot of these pre-screens want a specific camera angle, and it doesn't always give you the best sound. Then you're going to stand halfway in between the microphone, half in the camera, and you're going to clap 2 to 3 times. And when you do that, you're going to then import into your video editor the audio and the camera file. Then you're going to find your 2 claps, and you're going to line up the claps of the audio with the claps of the camera. Then you are going to mute the audio on the camera and use just the audio from the audio recording device. This is not cheating, this is just being smart. Because we haven't done anything weird here with making you sound different. We are just dealing with insane requirements like getting you a 3/4 shot, which requires you to set your phone back way farther than where the sound is going to be good. So you put the phone where the sound is good, you put the camera where the video meets what their needs are. Everything should be an accurate representation. It is okay to use a little equalization if you need to. Some rooms warm up everything and it doesn't sound good. You can use EQ to make it sound like the person. That's the key there. Don't change the sound, just let it sound like them. Do not add compression, do not add reverb, absolutely no auto-tune. If the lighting is off and you want to color correct the video for the lighting, you can color correct. That's not a problem. Then let's try to jump into the live audition. This is the last section we're covering here. Then we'll keep doing questions. After the pre-screen, this is a callback. We already like you. If we passed you through the pre-screen, we like you. We want you to be amazing when you show up in person. We want you to slay. We want to see the real you, though, as well. So we want you to come in and coach your students, teachers, to just be themselves, having a comfortable conversation with an adult. Theater faculty are way more chill in general than music faculty tend to be. Music faculty tend to still have a lot of the norms from our historical conservatories, where there is definitely a line between the faculty. They don't always talk to the student walks in, they do their thing, their heads are down writing, they all go by doctor or professor. Nothing wrong with that, it's just the culture. Theater culture tends to be first names, very informal. We meet the student at the door, talk to them, ask them how their day is going, we chit chat because we want to get to know them. And then we walk them through audition. I don't even want them to slate. I just want them to tell me the 2 songs like a normal person that they're going to sing, and then I just want to hear them. So tell them to relax into the vibe of the room. Go with the vibe of the room. Every room's going to be different. Some will be more formal, so be more formal as needed. Relax where needed. Do you present the same songs used for a pre-screen at your live audition? It can go both ways. Strategy A is to repeat what you already did. And the advantage there is the rep is solid. It's why they called you in. So you might as well go do what you know they already like. Strategy B is to show new material. Now, why would you do this? Because you have some rep that's better in person than on video. There's some songs that just don't record well. They got too much movement. They asked you to film waist up, and it just doesn't look right. You might have several good options where you've got 4 songs that are really, really solid and you really want them to see those. Then go ahead and sing your new stuff. You could have a song that on the recording on the pre-screen that you did Light in the Piazza, and having a pre-recorded track, you were fine. You're going to an audition with a live accompanist and you're afraid they won't play it the way you're used to. Switch up your song. Nothing wrong with that. You should also bring in your book 4 to 6 additional songs besides the ones that you plan to present. Because a lot of schools will ask you what else is in your book. They may not love your audition songs, but they like you. Or they just want to see, they like you and they just want to see what else you can do because it's down between you and one other person. So have 4 to 6 additional songs that are all cleanly cut. You know how to nail them. They're ready to go. All choices should be playable by a live accompanist, or you should have a track for it. Clearly marked sheet music, and everything that you do live should be performable at your 80% of your best. You are going to be on a plane many times, sleeping in a hotel, and the students are going to be dry and dehydrated. You don't want them to have something that they can only sing on their best day. Make sure that whatever they select, they can sing really well on an 80% day or even a 70% day, because we see a lot of that where people don't feel great. So help them pick rep that they can do. Make sure they have a reliable Bluetooth speaker. I see a lot of students who just buy a cheap one on Amazon and they have problems getting it to connect, and they're trying to reset the volume. Jibbles, or what my students call them, the JBL speakers. JBL's Jibbles work really well. They're very reliable. So get something like that that you know is going to work, where you don't have to spend a bunch of time trying to set it up in the room. And make sure you have clean tracks when you walk into a live room. I usually say put at least 3 seconds of clear space, just silence, between the time you hit play on your phone and the time the music starts. So that way, if you have the phone on a table, you can press play, you can take your steps back to where you're going to do your audition, and then you can settle in and sing it. If you need 5 seconds, fine. Put yourself the amount of time that you need. Don't leave us hanging forever, but make sure that you give yourself the time you need to do your absolute best audition. People were asking about these mass cattle call auditions. They're wonderful for students, especially students on a budget. Unifieds happens in Vegas, Chicago, LA, and New York City. There's about 20 to 40 schools that show up to each one of these cities, and they all hold auditions the same weekend. And there's schools that also show up to those cities. You have to go to 3 or 4 of Unifieds if you want to be a part of it. Some schools don't want to go to 3 or 4 of these cities. They only want to go to 1 or 2. So they just hold auditions the same day. If you can do these are great. Right? Moonifieds is a pay thing. You have to pay to do some coachings with the Moonifieds group. And then you can go up to Dallas and you can audition for 20 schools in 2 to 3 days in Dallas. CAP happens in Atlanta. Last year, I think it was St. Louis.
It's going back to St. Louis again, yeah.
Go back to St. Louis, right? So there, again, you walk in, you do an initial 90-second package in front of a bunch of schools, then they call you back. You can be seen by tons and tons of people at one time. Southeastern Theater Conference does this for juniors. They do it for seniors, but it's so late that most schools aren't recruiting seniors. But if you're a junior, you can go and do a 90-second audition package for 40 to 60 schools, and then you get called back by those schools and they start developing interest in you, so you can start maybe getting into some schools as a junior. It's going to be in Baltimore this year. International Thespians Festival is usually in Nebraska. It's again another mass cattle call audition opportunity. You'll have this video, so if you didn't catch all these things, you'll be able to rewind back to it. How important are the college-specific audition dates versus scheduling a different date? I wouldn't. I know you can get away with that in some music degree programs, but those music degree programs aren't usually juggling hundreds and hundreds of applicants. We just don't do it at my institution because there's no way we could do individual special auditions for people. The audition dates are the audition dates, and unfortunately, you got to try to find out how to make them work. We know it's tough. There's no good solution to this. But yes, schedule on one of their audition dates. How important is it to audition on campus? Anymore, it's not. It doesn't really matter. If you can do a regional audition and it saves you money, go for it. Again, as Holly mentioned earlier, you're really going to want to make your college visits after you've been accepted, not before. Can you talk a little bit about a virtual audition if you can't make it in person? Are they given the same consideration? So I think this is, again, school to school. We quit doing virtual auditions at Shenandoah for a bunch of different reasons. We just felt that they weren't effectively showing us as much as we were seeing by everyone else live. We were also finding that the students who were auditioning for us virtually weren't actually as interested in us as the students who showed up live. And I don't think we got anybody, maybe one person out of 5 years of doing virtual auditions, and it was a lot of time and a lot of technical problems, and we just decided it wasn't worth it. If you're a special, unique type that is really in high demand, then virtual auditions might really work for you. Otherwise, I would say try to get in front of people live, all right? And then what if a student doesn't get in anywhere? Students should consider taking a gap year. And Holly's got something to say about this too. But for a gap year, you just take a year off after high school and you don't do anything. You except go practice, and work a day job and try to do community theater. Do not go take any college classes. Do not go to community college. Do not try to get gen eds out of the way, because there are a good number of universities that treat financial aid for transfer students different than financial aid for first-time freshmen. And if you even take a single English class after you graduate high school and you take one English class at a community college, you will now
You're
be
a transfer student.
And your financial aid could be cut in half. Any other things on that?
No, that's the biggest takeaway. Now, that doesn't count, if you do dual enrollment while you're in high school, that's fine. But as soon as you graduate and you take a college course, you're transferred.
Yeah. Someone asked about summer training programs for students 14 to 18. I started to write this list. I almost erased it and I was like, well, we'll start here. These are not the best. I think they all do wonderful things. These are 5 that came to mind when I saw this question come in. Interlochen, M-Pulse at University of Michigan, Oklahoma City University, Artsbridge, Broadway Dreams. This is nowhere near conclusive. There's probably close to 80, I would say, 75, 80 of them that you could do. You just need to get online over on that College Confidential, and College Confidential has a summer programs list. If you get in on any of those Facebook groups, they're also going to have some lists for you as well. Yeah, we're in straight to our general questions. Okay, so I know I'm losing Holly in like 13 minutes. Holly, what else do you want to say that you haven't had a chance to say yet?
Well, real quick, I need to ask a question that I've been
Okay.
sitting on from our Q&A. So can you talk a little bit about how auditioners, I guess adjudicators like yourself, assess a student's readiness to train versus being right for a specific role like they do in a professional situation?
Ooh, that's a really good, really tough question. I like that. So it's that's hard. I mean, for the specific role, you know what traits you're looking for. So it's like I'm looking for these certain traits that fit Jenna in Waitress, and so I'm casting at her for Elle in Legally Blonde. And so you're looking for something specific that aligns with your artistic vision. When because we consider it casting for our program, to me, again, it goes to trying to have a program that's well balanced with a lot of different types of people. And by types, I do not mean typical character archetypes. I mean like the student who wears Converse with everything and who loves to knit and make jokes. You know, the kid who does magic, literally like magic tricks. And on the side is a D&D dungeon master. You know, finding so many things that different people are doing that are unique. The singer-songwriter, the kid who plays piano, the kid who can do, we have a baton twirler at Shenandoah. He was like a world champion on baton twirling. And like that skill is going to hook that kid up with so much work when he graduates. And it's going to be like a huge for him. Like when he walked in and brought his batons and he threw them 30 foot in the air, spun around 4 times and caught it, we were like, hello. And then when he told us he does it with fire, then we watched his dance audition, and then you heard him sing and act. You're like, well, duh. Like, there's
And they
no
like
way.
created a position in marching band
Yeah, they
specifically
created
to
a side marching band
showcase.
for this kid. You know, but you just watch that and you're like, this is so phenomenal. I've never seen anything like this, and I got to have that. You know, and so it's, to me, it's on our side where we're seeing at Shenandoah, we see around 1,200 people a year. For us, it's really kind of sitting back and going, what are some of the most interesting people that we're going to see? And then there's always people that are interesting because they are just one of the best of their type that we've seen. They do play like the leading lady or the leading man. Again, male identifying, female identifying, but they play that really, really, really well. And you're looking at that and going, that is so marketable. And for us, one of the big things is if I put that in front of a casting director, if I put that in front of an agent in their senior year, are people going to be interested? And if I'm going, that's one of the best versions of that type that I have seen this year, that is so marketable, then I'm in on that as well. So it's both the unique and the typical where you're going, this is solid. By the time they go to college, or by the time they get an agent, they're going to be great. Now, when I worked at this school 15 years ago, we were not at this level. So what I looked at 15 years ago, when we were seeing 100, 150 people audition a year, is I would go look at the students and go, well, where can we get that voice over the course of 4 years with our training? Where can we get that dance over the course of 4 years? Where can we get the acting? We would give a lot more adjustments in the room. So then I was watching for how they reacted to the adjustment, and I paid a lot of attention to who they were as a human being. Because if I really had a good connection with them as a person, then we knew that we could train them. So I think the answer is going to vary a lot. That kind of gives you like the 2 opposite sides of the spectrum. Is really looking for the trainability. That is a thing. I think you're going to find that at less competitive schools. And at the highly competitive schools, you're probably looking at more of what I said. Like that's the best of that type. That's the most unique that I've seen. Because when you see 1,200 people and you have to narrow it down to 36, you got to draw lines in the sand. And those are some of the easy lines to draw.
Great answer. I actually have to leave in like 3 minutes because I
So
need
what
to.
knowledge bits do you want to drop, Holly, before we lose you?
Oh, and by the way, y'all, I'm leaving because I have a 6 o'clock client that I need to be ready for. Um, I think we went over a lot of the big things. Do everything earlier than you think that you need to based on deadlines. Keep in mind the nerds and the talent are two different pieces with two different deadlines and requirements. Um, Carve out a time every week to dedicate to the college process. It's never too early to start. You can start doing your research of schools even as early as sophomore year. Junior year is a really great time to do that as well. Um, just plan ahead. I mean, my goal for all of my students is that we have, whether it's performing arts or not, so we're done with every application, every essay. If it was my option to be November 1, but it's December 1. And also for those of you who are students or parents or teachers who work with students, it's hard. It's a family commitment for everybody. And it's also extra stress on the student, not just for the audition process and hearing no sometimes, but also they're going to have friends that in 2 months are going to be walking around their school shirt. They know exactly where they're going. They know exactly what their next year at the same time is going to look like. And your kid's not going to know probably until April. I mean, they'll get their offers end of February, beginning of March, but then when you go through it, so just give them some extra hugs and encouragement and try to encourage them to not let them get to you because they're going through a whole different process.
Yeah, it's a lot.
Cool.
All right.
All right,
Well,
guys.
I tell you, Holly volunteered her time today. She even moved a client to be here to talk with everybody and to contribute to all this. So, Holly, thank you so much for being here and giving your insight. I popped Holly's email address over in the webinar chat in case you need to reach out to her. Like I said, she is available for consulting. So if you have students that you feel like would really benefit from her services, you can reach out to her. She said she's also happy to answer some easy questions and stuff. If you have any, you can reach out to her and I'll give you my contact info. You can reach out to me as well. And when we send out the video with the the video of this thing, I'll have her information in that as well. But Holly,
Yeah, thank
thank you
you.
for being here and sharing
Yeah,
your expertise with
absolutely.
us all.
This has been awesome. And I did have a question that I said that I didn't think we were going to get to, but I haven't forgotten about it. I had a question about how to navigate the accepted platform. Um, so what I think I'm going to end up doing is kind of just creating a free resource of how to do that.
Sounds awesome.
So I'll make sure it gets to Matt and it'll work out. But thanks, guys. This has been awesome. Hope you
Thank
have a
you. We're
great rest of your
staying
day.
on. We're not done. I'm staying
Oh,
on and we're going to
okay.
keep
I'm
going.
going.
So
Bye.
good. Bye, Holly. All right. So I'm going to stay on. We're going to keep going through all of your questions. Accepted, I laughed when she brought that up. I like Accepted. I worked with them actually to help them develop some stuff in the initial stages, but every school has different requirements, and the poor people at Accepted now have been hit with like 200 universities that all want something different on the sites, and they try to customize it, but you just never know, depending on which school you're applying to, what kind of things you might run into. So I'm glad that she's going to put that together. So all right, so I'm going to go through this. Great. All right, so I have a question. Are there any downsides from doing cattle call auditions like Unifieds? I don't think so. I mean, there's nothing that really sticks out to me that makes me think there's a downside. We all go there knowing that we're helping these students out. I don't, everybody's giving up a weekend of their life to go up to New York City to sit in on an audition room for 8 hours that day. We don't look at those students as any less. We're actually going there because we know sometimes they're really, really, really good and they just don't have the resources to go to all 20 schools that they're interested in. And so we're doing them, a solid by showing up where they're already going to be and letting them show us their best work. So I don't think there's anything negative that comes out of that experience. The only other positive is that if you're on a campus, then you get to see the campus experience. But like Holly said, sometimes we end up with students falling in love, and then you feel terrible knowing that you're already going to be letting them down, but that they don't get in. And, it's almost easier at Unifieds because they might really start to like the person. Then they find out they get in. Then they visit the campus. Then they fall in love. And it's kind of like it's almost better that way for the students' mental health. Because I care a lot about these students' mental health. I don't want them getting so overrun by this process because it can be a lot. So I've got 3 more slides of questions. I'm not going to put them up because I can't see your questions as they come in at the same time. So I'm just going to read them off my other computer. Would these same thoughts and guidelines apply when auditioning for postgraduate programs as well? I would say all the performance-oriented stuff, probably not. I think that you could infer better than I can on a lot of these things for, especially classical voice. I would say that for MFA programs, a lot of this is probably applicable because MFAs are very similar. All the school finding information is, very similar as well. How to teach gestures. So this goes beyond this webinar, and I don't want to go down this rabbit hole too much, but I'll just give you one little tidbit that you can start with, or 2. I'll give you 2 little tidbits. First of all is if you have 2 students in your studio and you have both of them trying to go through this process, have them come to each other's lessons, then have them play the scene partner for the other person, and just try to coach them into being themselves. How would they literally say the story to the other person if they were just in a normal conversation, at wherever teens hang out today? How would they have that conversation? And then remove the other person from the picture and have them repeat that conversation as a solo performance. Do this week after week, getting them to sing it to the other person, then take the other person away, and you should organically start to see some changes. You can talk to them about gestures as being 3 different kinds. We have emotive gestures, indicative gestures, and illustrative gestures, right? I feel you, Joanna. It's like an indicative. I feel you. Or it's emotive. I'm feeling it. I feel this here, right? So this is more of emotive. I feel you, Joanna. If I'm saying, there he goes, that's indicative. I'm pointing as we sing. And then illustrative would be like the tall, big sky. We would be illustrating what it is. So you can help at least use those 3 ideas with your students and ask them, is there an emotive gesture here that makes sense, or an indicative or an illustrative gesture here? As you're working with them on the 2 by, one-on-one where you have people sharing the lessons, you can do some things like that as well using those different gesture types. And I think that could be very helpful for them. Could you please explain what the dance component of the audition for musical theater consists of? So it depends. At one point, Shenandoah, they used to do a bar routine, and then they used to do a jazz combo. We don't do that anymore. A lot of places do some sort of a warm-up, and so they'll take you through a warm-up, then they'll teach a dance combo. Other places are trying to do things so fast, they just jump right into the dance combo. The most common dance combos are some sort of a musical theater cut. So it's some excerpt from a musical, and it's the kind of choreography they would have seen in that musical. And it's usually like, I'd say like a 45-second to 1-minute cut. They learn the choreography in about 30 to 45 minutes, and then they all take turns performing in front of each other. If you have a student who hasn't done a lot of dance, the best advice I can give you is to tell them to get on TikTok and start learning TikTok dances, because they just need to improve their ability to see what somebody is doing with their body, put that on their own body, and replicate it quickly. If they just start doing TikTok dances 1 a day, they don't have to repost them, just learn them. They're going to start tuning up that muscle, that cognitive ability to process that information, get it into their own system, and replicate it. If they do that all leading up to their live auditions, they're going to be better off than if they did nothing and just were afraid of that audition, right? They could also get online, and there's choreography videos all over YouTube. So just get on and start learning choreography. Ideally, they'd be in a dance class, but I realize that's not in reach for everybody for a multitude of reasons. What are the chances that neurodivergent individuals with mild cognitive disabilities will be admitted after their audition? I think it depends on the school. I mean, we have plenty of students that I think would fall under that category. Yeah, I feel pretty confident saying that we have a lot that fall under that category. And I would imagine that probably most other schools do too. We can't ask, so you're not going to ask. And, again, if we want a group of people that looks like the world we live in, then the world has neurodivergent people. So why wouldn't you have neurodivergent people in your program? I know we've definitely have had, and I think do currently have, students on the spectrum. They're great, because guess what? The world has people that have, people on the spectrum. So it only makes sense. Somebody just asked, does transgender affect admittance? I don't think so. I mean, I think that in today's world, again, that's what the world looks like. So I think that transgender students, they just need to be the best at what they do. So let's say if we have somebody who's trans female, They didn't do hormone replacement therapy before they went through puberty, and they still have a lower voice. Just transpose songs. If they feel like they are feminine identifying, they can still sing those songs, just transpose them into another key, because I think that's what we're seeing happen in the professional world. And the school either know that they have the resources to support that, or they don't have the resources to support that. And if they don't have the resources and don't know what to do to help that student, the student doesn't need to be at that school anyway. And that's hard for a student to hear, but if the school is not going to be supportive of that, then it's going to be a miserable 4 years. So if the school is, wants it to have an inclusive environment, they see talent that they like, they're going to take the talent and then they're going to support the student. And so, yeah, I don't think that's a roadblock at all. Do you think it's important for a BIPOC student to do a monologue specifically for their own racial demographic in that lens of what you could be cast in? No, I don't. In fact, I think you should empower each student to make the decision of how their racial and ethnic and religious identity plays a role in everything they do. So when I have students come into my studio, we have an intake form, and on one of the questions on the intake form is, how do you want your racial, ethnic, religious, gender identity to play a role? I have college students, so sexual preferences can be a part of it as well, to play a role in the kind of music that you play, because everybody's different. I have students who identify as Black who want nothing to do with roles that are specifically for Black performers. I have other students who are Black who really want to focus on stories from the Black community because that's where they really want to perform. And then I have lots of people in the middle. So you let the student make the decision about what feels best. People are cast from all kinds of different backgrounds today and all kinds of different roles. Things are much better than they were 10 and 15 years ago. So I don't think we need to have the student put themselves in a box unless that is the box in the playground where they want to do their work because that's what they're passionate about. Then we should absolutely support them in that. What major audition mistakes are you seeing over and over again? It's kind of building off the last thing. It's not staying true to who they are. It's what I kind of touched on it earlier, but you really need to think, who am I as a person? What do I have that I want to say as an artist? And how do I want to, what kind of career do I want to have? Every single time a student defies that, they try to be what they want to be, there is a price to pay on the other side. I get it a lot of times. I mainly work with the seniors at Shenandoah. And then by their senior year, I get some people are like, I guess I've always been trying to be this because I thought that's what people wanted. But through this program, I've realized I shouldn't do that. But now I'm kind of lost. And they're in a not great spot. If we could start empowering high school students as soon as they start picking up this study to start really staying true to who they are and what they want to do, we're going to have a lot happier performers. And I think we're going to see a lot better mental health amongst these performers because they're staying true to their identity. The other major mistakes I see is people who didn't do the work. They didn't really prepare. They barely know their music. I see people coming in and trying to sing stuff that's beyond their means when they should have sung something a little bit easier. They're trying to impress us, and they have a day where they have to sing it at 80% of what they're capable of, and they can't impress us anymore. And I see people who try to impress us by making everything really big. Like, I had a student one time in an audition jump on top of a chair, rip off their shirt, throw it across the room, jump off the chair and slide on their knees across the audition floor. And it was so much happening 6 foot away from us. And I was like, why are you trying this hard? Like, this is not appealing for so many reasons, where in all reality, the talent wasn't bad. There was potential there. The student thought they had to do something outrageous to get our attention. And I think high school kids forget that they are infinitely more interesting than they realize. And we are interested in seeing the real them. I think that's hard for them to process sometimes, but the more that you can do as teachers to support them being, their authentic selves, the better off they're going to be. How important are letters of recommendation, and what kinds of things do committees look for in such letters? I never see them at Shenandoah. I think what's helpful, though, I see them on some other aspects of things, and I see letters that people write for things. I do get unsolicited letters of recommendation all the time. What's helpful for me is not the commentary about their talent. I'm already judging whether or not I think the talent fits what we need. Hearing somebody else tell me their opinion of the talent doesn't give me anything that I haven't already made my opinion about from watching their performance. What I don't know that I really want to know is, how are they as a worker? Do they learn their stuff fast? Do they come in prepared every week? Are they, people who have overcome a lot of challenges in life? And as they've overcome those challenges, they've stayed true to what they want to do, and they haven't let it get inside and get in their way. That they've made a huge voice change in the last 6 months, and their voice was a little unsteady, but it's made huge leaps and bounds. And you think that this is the thing that's going to really, our school is going to help them get over the next hump. You know, information like that, that I would not know just from watching their audition, is really helpful. Because then you read that letter and you go, okay, I get the sense that this is who this person is. Now I have a letter that's telling me that that is who this person is. So that probably is who they are. And you then end up, you know, being really interested in them because they are offering what you need. How different are vocal performance auditions from musical theater auditions? And are the people holding the auditions ever the same? I think they're night and day, honestly, at least from my own experiences on both sides of the table. I think there tends to be a formality to a lot of vocal performance auditions. I do think schools are changing, so I know this is not the absolute rule. But the musical theater auditions tend to be a little more informal. I think in a Bachelor of Music degree program, you might see some of the same people behind the table. Musical theater programs have been trending towards hiring their own voice faculty that aren't in the vocal performance program, so you're probably going to see less crossover on that, although there are schools where they are still in the music department teaching voice lessons, and they may be invited to the auditions. So I don't have a solid answer for you on that. I think it varies, but you know, I think we've covered a lot of that these are a different beast. They really are. Minimum number of schools a student should apply to, that is another really, really tough question. I do think 10 to 15 is the minimum, and I hate saying that because I know that's expensive, and I know that's a lot. I think that it's unfair, but the marketplace is determining it. It's about 3366 on gender identity balance, of male identifying students being about 33%, female identifying students being 66%. A lot of schools want a balance, so if they're going for a balance, you have the same number of schools all vying for 33% of people and 66% of people. So if you are male identifying, 10 to 15 schools is probably reasonable. If you're a female identifying, I hate to say it, but I think what's safe is at least 15. I think if you can push upwards towards 20, that's probably being safe. I think you need to keep in mind, though, with your students, of where do they fall in this talent pool. If you're watching these pre-screens, and also get online and look up Young Arts. It's just Young Arts competition, and watch the people who win Young Arts on the musical theater side. And if you're looking at your student and saying they're that good, then 15 is probably fine. But they need to be that good. If you're looking at it and you're going, yeah, they're not quite there, I would be safe with 15 without a doubt. And then at least do those pre-screening 15 by October 15th if you can, so you can adjust if you need to, right? But we want to be safe. Which programs do you recommend for non-belting sopranos or those who are not as strong in dance? For non-belting sopranos, I think I'd recommend all of them, because the world still needs sopranos. And I think that every school is going to take sopranos. They just may not take 10 sopranos for 10 slots. They'll probably take a mix of sopranos and belters and rock singers. So I wouldn't, you know, even Shenandoah, people think we don't take sopranos because we're known as the pop rock school, but we take sopranos all the time, right? And so I think you can't read too much into that. The student just needs to be awesome. So they need to just be really good at what they do. Those who aren't strong in dance, I would say that if you get on the forums, because I don't want to say things about other schools out of respect for the other schools, but I will say that if you get on those forums, you're going to find out who had killer hard dance audition calls. If the dance audition call is really, really, really hard, that's a good indication they're looking for dancers. Doesn't mean they're going to not take non-dancers, but they're probably looking for dancers. You also get through and read about the schools, you are going to find people telling you this school really wants dancers, and you can build off of that, right? Not trying to dodge the question, I just don't think it's fair to my colleagues to try to answer it for them and call out certain schools and not other schools. My daughter has a few years to go until we are applying to college. If there are any tips on what we should be focusing on in order to be ready to apply to a musical theater college when the time comes, that would be lovely. Get into dance class as soon as you possibly can. If you have to pick one, pick jazz. If you can pick two, do jazz and ballet. Don't worry about tap. If you already dance and you want to pick up tap, fine. Tap is common to be taught in college. A lot of people just don't have access to it in their high school training. Get into an acting class. Acting is best learned with other people, not by yourself. Get into an acting class. and start really, if you're not already, staying dedicated to those voice lessons and really refining what you can do and getting really good at what you do. I would try to get into a summer camp somewhere where they have high school people coming in. So some of these summer camps are production oriented. And so going to a summer camp to do a production is fine. I don't think it's the most valuable thing if you're trying to focus on college auditions. I don't think there's a whole lot of value in it because you're just focused on doing another show. It's great, it's fun. You should totally go do it if you want to just have fun. But if you really are worried about preparing for college auditions, find one of these places where they're bringing in college faculty to do workshops or bringing in Broadway professionals to do workshops. And the majority of the focus is on those workshops. A lot of these places do a showcase, or they might, some of them try to do both. They do both the workshops and the musical. So, but find some place that's going to give you that. Listen to every podcast that you can and really start digesting all the information you hear and going through the steps that we talked about in this webinar today. Does early action elicit an advantage? How so? I don't think it does. Because we're all making decisions usually towards the end because we want to see everybody and give everybody a fair shot. So early action might have an advantage for an institution, but for a musical theater program, I've never heard anything suggesting to me that it's a good thing or something you need to do. And I think we covered this one last, so if you have any other questions, feel free to start popping them in the chat. But someone asked the order to turn in submissions in. I would get your regular application in first. Make sure those transcripts are ordered. Make sure the letters of recommendation have been requested, so you're getting in all those materials. Most schools will let you audition even if your application isn't complete. But it does get annoying when we're trying to make a decision and admissions is telling us we can't because you haven't turned in all of your stuff yet. So try to get it in early and don't delay it. And then, like I said, I would just pre-screen early for the schools that are definitely reaches and challenges so you can see how they go and then adjust your list after you find that out. Is it wiser to apply to schools programs that aim to improve your strengths? Strong vocals would mean a stronger vocal program than dance acting, or to improve your weaker spots? This is a tough question too, because again, it comes into you as an individual. I mean, I think this is a tough question. There's not an easy answer to this. I think it's very individual. If you have somebody that you know is a killer actor, killer singer, who feels that their purpose in this world as an artist is to focus on those kinds of characters that have deeply connected stories, where the singing is an aspect of the work, but they really want to deepen their connection, that they want strong vocals, strong acting, going to a program that focuses on that's probably the smartest thing. They're still going to learn how to dance and learn how to move, but the people who go down that track are not the people who need to be top-level dancers. If you have a student that wants to be a generalist, so they want to kind of do some ensemble stuff, they want to work their way up through ensembles into leads, they want to do a combination of things. For those students, if you're looking at them and going, your dance really isn't that strong, you probably do want to trend towards getting them the dance training, because the dance is going to take 4 years of rigorous study. The voice is going to continue to grow. If they're already a good singer, it's just going to get better, and they will have the rest of their life to continue developing that voice. But they need to get that dance caught up, because the way for most people nowadays of getting their career off the launch pad is going into the ensemble of a show where they're understudying a lead. And then eventually they start working their way up through the system. But you can't get that gig if you can't dance well enough to get in the ensemble. So in that instance, I would say we probably want to steer them more towards the place that's going to really develop their weaknesses. If you're looking at a student and you're realizing that all around they just have a lot of work to do except for this one thing, so like voice is their only strong thing and acting or dance aren't great, I don't think I'd send them to a voice strong program that doesn't have strong acting and dance. I think I would really focus on trying to get that acting and dance up to par, because if the voice is already strong, what they really need to do is focus on getting the other skills enhanced. So I think it's an individual choice. It's a little bit tough, but yeah, good luck. I know some of these are ambiguous questions, but unfortunately that's how it is. All right, let's see. Can you send in a pre-screen before an academic application? I think at a few places you can. I wouldn't. I would get your academic application started. Like Holly said, it doesn't mean that you have to turn in all the stuff. Start it. Pay your app fee, get it started, and then go back and submit the other stuff. That way you're in the system. If you try to send in just the pre-screen and you're not in the system, the computers don't talk well. So all of a sudden what's going to happen is you're going to get in their application system and you're going to be floating around on a get accepted system or somewhere else. And then when they go to cross-reference things, they're going to find that you're not already on the list of people they were expecting to see. Now they got to go digging to find where you were, and they might not do a good job of it, and your application could get all mixed up, and you could end up in a pile that doesn't get everything handled appropriately. So I would make sure you have that initial application in, then do your pre-screen. If an extremely talented student does not get accepted to one of their dream schools for whatever reasons, do you recommend taking a gap year and reapplying while training throughout the year, or should they go to one of their safety schools? I think that there's no reason why they can't do a gap year. I think it depends on a lot of things. You got to figure out, is the economics make sense? Do you have a shot at getting so if you were on, let's say, the priority hold list or a wait list for a university and you didn't make the cut, they really liked you. If you take a gap year and reapply and you're even better than this year, you stand a good chance of getting in. I know a lot of faculty at a lot of institutions really like gap year students because there's a lot of maturity to them. And they come in with even stronger skill sets if they worked all year long, and that's a real benefit. If you didn't pass the pre-screen for any of your dream schools and you only got into your challenge and reach, you can give it a shot and see where things go. I don't know, it depends how much work you got and what resources you have. It might drastically improve, it might not. So then you got to juggle family resources, family support, and all of those other things. So I think that those would be the considerations. I don't think there's a solid answer, but how to think through it is if you were really close, they acted like they liked you a lot. That happened at multiple of your dream schools, and you just didn't, it wasn't your year for whatever reason. Gap year makes sense. Like it wasn't your year, but you were so close. Take that time. Really up your game, go back right at those schools and hit your safety schools again. Some of the safety schools will allow you to defer admissions for a year. A lot of schools do that. So defer admissions for a year, so then you already are in somewhere, then go do your other thing. If you're just not getting any bites, you might want to do another year and try that and get something that's a little bit different than your safety school. I think that's, then again, you got to kind of look at your own situation and see what makes the most sense to you. But I don't think that if you're not in love with your safety schools that you got into, I think it probably makes sense to take a gap year because you don't want to go to somewhere you're not in love with or you're not super excited about. If you're just going to a school just to do it because that was your only option, I find that some of those students tend to be really frustrated with everything and they don't do as well as those students who are excited to be at whatever school it is that they're attending. Okay. Any last minute questions? If they are, go ahead and drop them in the Q&A. I'd say just the most important thing with all of this is that you really do the work on the back end of preparing for these auditions. All the stuff that we talked to today is a lot about doing the work. And as you're doing the work, you as teachers who are here, try to support your students to really stay true to their authentic self. Because as I said, all of the mistakes that I usually see tend to go from people trying to be more than who they actually are. And we can see through that. We see that they're a soprano who's not really a belter, but who thinks that we only want belters, so they're trying to show us that they can be one. If we really need you to belt, then we'll teach you to belt. We don't need you to try to be something that you're not. If you are not a leading whatever, and you're the quirky, or hippie-fied version of, the sidekick, then just be that and be the best that you can be. Somebody's going to be interested because that exists in this world. It exists in musicals, and we need people to play those roles, right? And just really cast a wide net, as wide of a net as you can. Find out what people are responding to well, and keep leaning into what you're getting good results with and good reactions to. All right. It looks like that was the end of our questions. I'm just scrolling back up to make sure I didn't do anything else. Thank you all for coming and checking this out today. I know some people were having problems getting email links. I think I figured on my end how I can see if your email bounces, and I was trying to send individual emails to those people. Just make sure that your email server isn't blocking info@ccminstitute.com. That's the email address I'm going to send the video out from. The video is going to get processed tomorrow. They're going to pass it over to me. Then I'm going to get it up onto YouTube, and then I'll share it with everybody on the mailing list. All right. So it's been fun having this chat with all of you today. I know she's not here, but thanks again to Holly for taking time out of her evening to come be here. I wish you all nothing but the best of luck as you navigate this process, and hang in there. Best scholarships or resources. That's more of a Holly question. Feel free to email her. She may know some of those things. I'm not as into what those are as much as I used to be. I know there's some good databases, but Holly said she was open to easy questions to answer. If it starts getting into consultation land, then it's more complicated. But I think you can shoot her an email on that at holly@hollyjohnsonconsulting.com, and she should be able to answer. All right. So thank you so much for coming. We're going to wrap this up, and keep your eye out for other CCM Institute webinars, because I think we're going to do a few more throughout this year on some different topics. I enjoyed the evening with you. Have a great day and a great rest of the fall.